It was Monday morning, and we were sitting at the kitchen table. We'd just completed breakfast. I was drinking coffee and reading the morning paper. My wife, Bea, asked if I may put down the newspaper. "Rob, I need to talk to you." I placed the newspaper on the table. "I am leaving you, Rob. I want a divorce. Is this all?" I grabbed up the paper again and began reading the sports section. "I am serious. Rob." I ignored her, and she became upset. "Damn it! Rob, put down the blasted newspaper and talk to me. What is this about? I don't have anything to say but farewell. In any case, it's not a significant loss. You haven't been a good wife for more than a year, so go." I put down the newspaper, stood up, and entered the room I used as my home office. I got a notebook and pen from my desk and retrieved an envelope from one of the drawers. I returned to the kitchen table, sat down, and scribbled home on the top page of my notepad. Thank you, and thank God she's leaving me. I was about to put it in the mail when an idea occurred to me. I pulled one of the lottery tickets I had purchased the night before from my wallet and placed it in the envelope. I then added to my note, "Maybe if you're lucky and win, it'll be enough to keep the cheater happy so she doesn't cheat again. Good luck, youngster. You'll need it." I signed it. Rob is really grateful. I folded the page, placed it in the envelope, sealed it, addressed it, and delivered it to Beatrice. "When you see him, give him this." She accepted it with a horrified expression on her face, saying, "You know, just because you think I'm ignorant doesn't mean I am." "Perhaps," I replied, reclaiming the envelope from her. "I should send it personally. I am not confident that you will not open it, read it, then throw it away. Now why don't you pack your things and leave my life? And because you're leaving, you should leave the house as quickly as possible. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not moving out so you can bring your lover in." I stood up, poured coffee into a travel mug, topped it off, and left for work. Later on the way, I stopped at the bank to cancel our savings and checking accounts and retrieve the contents of our safe deposit box. Then I went to a bank near work and created fresh accounts in my name only. Next, I contacted to cancel all of our shared credit cards and arrange for new ones in my name exclusively. Following that, I resumed my regular duties. I stayed late after work, had dinner and drinks with my executive assistant, and informed her that I was back on the market in case her sister was still interested. Stella chuckled and replied, "The hell with my sister if you're single again. I want to be the first in line." Stella started as a secretary for me 10 years ago and proved so beneficial that 4 years ago, I elevated her to assistant and then to justify the promotion I believed she deserved, I made her my executive assistant. 2 years ago, on a Sunday, I hosted a backyard cookout and invited Stella. She said she couldn't come since her sister was coming from out of town, so I suggested she bring her sister instead. Her sister Tara was a very busty, sexy-looking blonde. On Monday, Stella laughed as she told me Tara had a crush on me. I laughed and advised her not to bring it up because we were both capable of becoming incredibly jealous at times. Stella has now told me she is interested in me. I had no idea she could have such thoughts. "Okay," I said jokingly. "Tara will then shift to second place, leaving you to take first." "I am not joking at all, boss. I am dead serious. I want to try it." "Stella, you might not agree with what I have to say." "What exactly?" "She informed me she wanted a divorce, so I'll leave it up to her and her partner, and I have no idea what their timetable may be." "Her lover. She slept with someone approximately a year and a half ago, and I believe she ultimately realized that a couple days a week with him wasn't enough. So she decided to go full-time. How long have you known?" "A year and a half. I knew almost from the moment it began." "How did this happen?" "A friend of mine observed her enter a motel room with a man and called me. I hired a private detective to follow me for a week and collected all of the information I required. A year and a half. You did nothing about it. What was I supposed to do? In this state, I'm going to get upset and completely change my life. Divorce is not your fault. Everything would need to be divided in half, and I'd have to sell the house and share the profits with her. I'd have to give up the pool, hot tub, woodworking shop, and 3-car garage to move into an apartment. No thanks. I chose to ignore it and let her cook for me, wash my clothes, and keep the house tidy. How could you be near her if she was cheating on you? You'd be astonished at how fast love can turn to hatred and then into indifference. I can't believe you, a healthy guy, could go a year and a half without sex. Who said without sex? As long as he offered, I accepted. she continued. So the frequency did reduce slightly. I didn't touch her on days when I knew she was with him, but otherwise the only difference was that I stopped making love and instead had sex. Do you know why she did it? I have no idea, although he was probably not the first. Do you believe she had other lovers? I don't know for sure. But I do know that in the 10 years we've been married, she has fallen into a certain mood 4 times that I can remember. For the time being, she continued to act as she had for the previous year and a half since becoming involved with this man. It's only a guess on my side, but I'd assume the other occasions were for the same reason. If she hadn't been spotted and I hadn't been warned, I would have taken. The current mood is just another one of those women's characteristics. Maybe my opinions are incorrect, but it doesn't matter. I know for certain about this affair, and that is all I need to know to understand. She is a cheater. What are you planning to do now? Wait. For what? And observe what she intends to do. Now she is on her own. I drained her bank accounts, canceled all her credit cards, and told her to leave the house. She requested a divorce, therefore I'll leave it up to her. Because she does not earn enough to maintain herself and hire a lawyer, she'll need to collect money for a lawyer from her lover, and I'm not sure if he'll provide it to her. I presume they talked about it before she hit me, but I have no way of knowing. I'm simply suggesting that if you're truly interested in me, you'll be associated with a married man who has no idea how long it will be until he divorces. You're thinking about it the incorrect way, Rob. How is this so? If she files for divorce, she will have control. You will be served. This might be bad. You have no idea what she may do, and he may order you to leave the house and hand it over to her until the hearings. What if she obtains a restraining order against you, claiming mental and physical cruelty? You have to set the pace, boss. You have to be in the driving seat. Make her respond, not the other way around. Besides, you'll be a big assistance to me. Can you help me? How? If you're going to wait until she files. What if she doesn't? What if her lover does not pay her for it? This would place us in a situation of adultery, and she might use that against you in the future. You accuse her of cheating, and she responds, "So what?" You did too. If you file, you are announcing that you believe the marriage is over, and whatever you do after that is none of her business. Legally, you will remain married until the divorce is finalized, and being with me is still technically considered adultery. However, no court will hold it against you if it begins after you file for divorce from me. So it appears that I must refrain from contacting you until either you or I take legal action. If we wait for her, it may be years, or perhaps only a week when she would have control. If you file, you can consult with a lawyer early tomorrow and serve me by Thursday. That would allow me to spend the weekend working on winning you over. You're winning me over. I am dead serious, boss. What's the purpose of being first in line if I don't make use of it? She was correct, and I knew it. So I took out my cell phone and called Josh using speed dial. Josh and I had been friends since 3rd grade, and he worked as a family lawyer. Family law was a courtesy word for divorce law. When he responded, I told him I needed his legal help and outlined my situation. He was unhappy to hear it because he and his wife, Sally, were our friends and he liked me, but he promised to take care of it as soon as he arrived at his office in the morning and invited me to stop by at noon. I could sign the papers, and then we could go eat lunch. Then, just to be a jerk, I informed him I needed a restraining order. I lied and claimed he promised me that if I gave her any trouble for leaving her, her lover, Tom Noble, would sort me out. Josh chuckled and said he knew that was complete nonsense, but he would do it. You are aware that this order will be heard within the next 10 days, correct? I can receive it and serve it, but the judge must hold a hearing before ordering it to remain in effect. I know, and I'm ready for it. But right now, the major goal is to get her out of the house and keep her out for a while. We don't have children. Therefore, she has no motive to use the house while the divorce is pending. I adhere to the concept that possession is 9/10 of the law. There's no reason for a judge to kick me out and allow her in. That is what I'm going for. I told her to leave when we spoke this morning, but I'm not sure what I'll find when I get home. She might be gone, or she might still be present. Because I'm not sure where she'll be, I intend to serve her at work. There's no way you two could come to an agreement. None. Then I will see you tomorrow. I hung up. I looked across the table at Stella and asked, "What have you planned for me this weekend?" She laid out her ideas, which seemed quite excellent to me. When I got home, he was sitting at the kitchen table going over some paperwork. Why are you still around? I inquired, strolling to the refrigerator and selecting a bottle. This is also my house. I will stay here until I can make new arrangements. If you don't like my company, you're welcome to leave and bring your sweetheart here. Not in your damn life. Sit down and talk about what we're going to do. There is nothing to discuss. I know what I am going to do, and I do not care what you intend to accomplish. There are certain issues that need to be resolved. Rob. No, Beatrice. There are no such questions. It's simple. You mentioned that you want a divorce, so go grab it. You should engage a lawyer. You must file the documents and pay any court charges. What I will do is battle you tooth and claw for everything. We live in a no-fault state. Everything is split 50-50. So decisions must be made regarding who receives their portion. I'll stretch this out to keep your attorney's costs accruing. You realize they don't work for free, right? Do you want the coffee table? So guess what? I want it too. Do you want the couch? Too awful. It holds immense sentimental meaning for me, and I absolutely must have it. Why did this happen so suddenly? You didn't appear to care about any of this. You didn't even react when I informed you I wanted a divorce. All you did was instruct me to pack my things and leave. That happened before I had time to think about it. I stared into her eyes and took a chance. I let you off the hook the first 3 times since you refused to get a divorce. I liked you enough to be silent and stick with you because you always returned to me. She turned aside when I mentioned the first 3 times, which confirmed my assumptions. It's hard to explain why I stayed with you now, but I didn't file for divorce. I thought maybe I'd done something that truly irritated you, and you felt compelled to do this to get back at me. You eventually completed your affairs, and I mistakenly assumed it was because you realized you loved me and returned to me. I looked down at the floor, and the poo was already on my shoes. I assumed this situation with Noble was just a rerun of the other ones. But now I realize I was mistaken. I've come to realize that you're nothing more than a lowly cheater. And if you hadn't decided to leave me for Noble and break your relationship with him, you'd be looking for another jerk in 6 months or a year. Thinking about it, I realized I wanted some kind of vengeance. What I actually want to do is beat you with a thick belt until your skin tears and you bleed on the ground, but that would only throw me in jail. The only thing I can do to avoid going to jail is make this divorce as tough and expensive as possible for you. You're correct. This is also your home. And if you've decided to stay, I have to let you stay here. But I don't have to enjoy it, and I don't have to speak to you. Move your belongings to one of the spare bedrooms and stay the hell away from me. I drank my beer and headed up to our former bedroom to prepare for bed. I thought I'd fulfilled my goal. I'd given her plenty to think about, and she needed to go over everything with Noble and make judgments, which would take time. Josh would use this time to serve me while also obtaining the restraining order. I could be mistaken. Perhaps B had already met with a lawyer and the documents were on their way to me, but that is improbable. I grabbed the leftover monies when I canceled the credit cards, and they were about what I expected when I drew cash from the bank. It was also roughly what it would have been if he had consulted a lawyer. She would have used our money to compensate him. Of course, no bill could have covered the bill. All I could do was wait and hope Josh would take the first step. I got up and left the home before B emerged from her bedroom. I went to a bed and breakfast cafe for breakfast, and while sipping my coffee, I drafted a list of persons to contact after B was served. I wasn't about to let her make myself the bad guy. I would inform everyone about the divorce and explain why it was occurring at work. Stella told me she was excited about the weekend, and I found myself praying it would happen. I met with Josh for lunch and signed the paperwork. He stated that he would go to the county building after lunch and file a petition. Do you still want her served at work? Damn right I do. I believe it will be around 10 tomorrow. Call me as soon as something happens. I want the locks changed before she can return home. Before leaving the workplace, I returned to work and make plans for the following day off. I called a locksmith and planned a rapid service for the next day. It cost me a little more, but I felt it was worthwhile when I arrived home. The base car was in the driveway, but she must have decided to stay in her room and avoid getting in my way because I didn't notice her. I woke up and left the home before B arrived downstairs, going to a bed and breakfast hotel for breakfast. Angie asked me where B was. I've always seen you with her, and now you're alone for 2 days in a row. You won't see us together again. We are splitting up. I see. she replied, accepting my order. When she handed the bill on the table, she mentioned that my phone number was on the back, not the restaurant's, mine. I was speechless as Angie walked away. Within 2 days, 2 women expressed an interest in me. So how come I wasn't enough for the woman I married? I'll never know since I won't ask. I drank coffee and read the morning paper. Waiting for the time is normally reserved for work. Then I returned home and began packing bags and relocating into the garage about 10:15. Josh called to say the papers had been served. I contacted the locksmith, and he arrived within 20 minutes. It wasn't even an hour later when the BDA car accelerated up the driveway. She couldn't miss the wide-open garage door and the enormous cardboard sign that read, "All your belongings are here in the garage." She remained there for a minute, staring at the notice, then attempted to enter the house, but her keys did not work. She rang the doorbell, but I did not answer, so she ultimately departed. I looked into the garage and noticed she had taken a few bags of her belongings. 2 minutes after she drove away, my cell phone rang. It was B. "Hello? You are an asshole. Did you really need to shame me in front of my colleagues? It's preferable to having you disgrace me in front of me. What the hell is this? The restraining order is ridiculous. I was terrified you'd call Noble to come and beat me up for being rude to you. That is ridiculous. You are already aware of this. I need to get into the house to obtain some items. All of your belongings are in the garage, and I did not update the garage door code. So if you don't have what you need, your opener will still work. Make a list and tell me where it is. I'll relocate it to the garage. Rob, stop being foolish. You're making things far more difficult than it has to be. I apologize for giving you some bother. Doesn't fully compensate for the years you tormented me. But I need to do something about my own mental health. Just be grateful I did not go aggressive. Goodbye. B." After hanging up with B, I sat down with the phone and began calling everyone on my list. Most people were horrified to hear that I had been cheated on, but 2 were not. One said he had finally caught her, while the other said he had always assumed you had an open marriage. She was usually out with some guy, but you never addressed anything. I figured I could remove those 2 from my friend list. These parents were the most affected by the news and attempted to convince me I was mistaken. I've always liked them, and they treated me nearly like the son they never had. But I wasn't going to let her tell them her version and make it look like everything was my fault. If I let it happen, they would think ill of me, which I did not want. After dealing with the calls, I went around the home again to gather Bay's belongings and cooked myself lunch. I had just finished eating when the guys from Erie Security arrived, not trusting me at all and certain that she would violate the restraining order and attempt to break into the house. On Thursday, I decided to build a security system at work that included cameras. I informed Stella that we were ready to travel for the weekend. She smiled. Then tomorrow night, dinner and dance, to begin with. I smiled when I arrived home. She did precisely what I expected. She collected some of her belongings before breaking into the house via the connecting door from the garage. She wrecked the kitchen. Plates and glasses littered the floor, and she shattered several lamps in the living room. The cameras caught everything. What made me smile was seeing her take all of my clothing out of the closet, pile them on the floor, and then squat over them and urinate on them. All of this was videotaped, proving that she not only violated the restraining order, but also acted intentionally and destructively. I could provide evidence at the restraining order hearing. I called Josh, who notified the police. The cops arrived, took a report, and took some photographs. The next day, he was arrested at work and transported to jail. She was fingerprinted, photographed, and hauled before the judge. She was charged with breaking the restraining order and willfully destroying private property. The judge scheduled a hearing and freed me on her own recognizance. Honestly, I was amazed it got that far. My date with Stella was enjoyable, and we have arranged a second meeting on Saturday. It also went well, and on Sunday we had a picnic together. On Monday, there was a hearing on the restraining order. When the judge saw the security camera footage, he not only made the restraining order permanent, but also required me to replace all of the wrecked property. Pay for dry washing my items and cover the cost of cleaning the bedroom. He ordered her 10 days to comply or risk imprisonment for contempt of court, only to be a jerk. I hired the most costly cleaning company I could locate to complete the task. He disappointed me. She was able to obtain the funds necessary to carry out all of the court's orders. I never saw her arrested for contempt of court. Stella and I spent the next 2 weeks meeting frequently. But nothing more happened beyond a few kisses, some of which were rather intense because neither of us felt comfortable since I was still married. However, we were gradually nearing a point where things were becoming serious. We did not oppose the divorce, which was finalized in 6 months. It was a conventional no-fault divorce with everything divided equally. I refinanced the house and purchased Albie's part. I'd been saving money in a separate account for a surprise round-the-world trip to commemorate our anniversary, and because she wasn't aware of it, I didn't pay her anything. She was also unaware of the final 2 certificates of deposit I had placed in the safe. I purchased them with my final 2 bonus checks. I had one more minor victory. He was awarded alimony for 2 years until she remarried, although it was fixed at $100 per week, less than the $500 she had requested. This was unexpected, and Josh explained that it was because we were really fortunate with the judges assigned to my cases. The judge who presided over the restraining order hearing and the judge who oversaw the divorce were not just cousins who appeared to discuss their cases, but they also had adulterous wives in the past. Neither believed that an innocent husband should be punished for the actions of a cheating wife, and while they followed the law, they did not go any farther than necessary. Whatever she had with Noble was apparently not very good, because 7 months after the divorce was finalized, she was living with her parents. 8 months after the divorce was completed, I was sitting in a bar at the Hilton, drinking a beer and eating a steak sandwich for lunch, when someone sat down next to me and asked, "Can I buy you a beer?" And I looked over to see my ex-wife's previous lover. "I want to speak with you," he said. Out of curiosity, I asked him to go ahead, and he waved to Agnes and ordered a beer for both of us. She brought them, and he took a sip, laid the glass on the bar, and stared at it for a few seconds before beginning to pull the bottle label off. When a tiny pile of label parts had accumulated in front of him, he replied, "I didn't mean to mess things up for you." He continued, still looking down at the bottle. She didn't wear any wedding bands the night I met her, so I had no idea she was married, and she certainly wasn't acting like a married woman. She was at Bud's bar with a bunch of girls she worked with, and when I asked her to dance, she consented. I bought her a drink, and she urged me to join her and the other girls. I danced with her 3 more times before asking her out, and she accepted. I fell madly in love with her, and within a month we were having sex any time we could get together. Initially, we had to stay in hotels because I shared an apartment with 2 roommates, one of whom was always present. We couldn't utilize her place because she stated that she lived with her disabled mother. That was also why we couldn't see one other as regularly. She was supposed to be responsible for her mother and may only go out when someone else was available to care for her. I finally acquired my own apartment, so we stopped staying in motels. Despite our sporadic meetings, I fell in love with her and planned to ask her to marry me. I planned to buy a house large enough for us and her mother, but before I could propose, a man I knew inquired why I was sleeping with the cheater. I was ready to beat him up when he informed me he was married and had previously cheated on her husband. It appears that 2 years ago, she cheated on you with his brother. When his brother discovered she was married, he broke up with her. I found it difficult to believe, but then I received your letter. I waited a week before confronting her, and she broke down in tears. She claimed she didn't love you because you were an abusive alcoholic who beat her and abused her emotionally. She stated she despised you but was frightened to leave because you had threatened her that if she did, you would find her and murder her and everyone she was with. By that point, I'd done some research and understood she was lying about her intentions to marry me. Vanished. But she was great in bed, and since you had kicked her out, I allowed her to move in with me as long as she agreed to sleep with me. Everything was fine, but when the divorce was finished and she began discussing marriage, I ended it. My parents broke up because my mother cheated on my father. She gained custody of me and eventually remarried, but then she got caught cheating on her second spouse. She got married a 3rd time and cheated again. I absolutely believe in the saying, once a cheater, always a cheater, and I told you that. I told her that as long as she was all right with a friends with benefits relationship, we would be okay, but nothing else. About 3 weeks later, I returned home from work, and she was gone. He took another sip of his beer and remarked, "There are rumors that you were aware of her and my relationship from the start. Why didn't you divorce her right away? You expressed it yourself. She was really good in bed. I decided to let it be. I'd have sex while someone cooked, cleaned the house, and did the washing. It probably would have stayed that way if she hadn't told me she was leaving and requested a divorce. He took another sip and continued, I never expected to say this to you, but I miss having her in my bed. He drank his beer and stood up. He took something out of his pocket, put it on the counter, and pushed it toward me. What's this? You gave me a lottery ticket. It is a winner. This is your half. I waited to give it to you so you wouldn't have to divide it with her during the divorce. See you around. And he departed. I looked at the slip. The cashier's check was for a large amount, an extremely enormous amount. When I arrived to the office, my assistant, Jean, commented, You look like the cat that just ate the canary. Was lunch so good? Lunch was fantastic. All right. Jean, my helper Stella, no longer worked for me. At least not in the office. When the twins came, she was at home painting the room that would become their nursery. Here is the next story. She interrupted him. It should be my choice, not yours. Your newspaper previously stated that they will do that. Yes, I understand, but I also have a personal stake in this issue. What if something occurs to you as a result of the photos I take? How do you suppose I'll feel? Please give it some time. Perhaps your memory will recover on its own. She groaned heavily, frustrated. Okay, if you're not going to take the photographs, please leave. I'll phone another newspaper. I'll find somebody who will. This made him enraged. One item. You certainly haven't forgotten how to be stubborn, he mumbled. She couldn't help but chuckle quietly. So, will you take photos, or should I ask the nurse to phone another newspaper, as stubborn as she was? Morgan simply stood there and gazed at her. Fine, she responded without waiting for a response. Go away, nurse. Okay, damn. Fine, I will take the dang pictures. But I still think you are insane. Her face brightened up with a huge smile. Look, the cops offered to set up a hotline. All calls would be sent directly to the police station so that they could screen the callers. Why didn't you inform me about it immediately away? Why haven't you asked? She responded with a smile. At the very least, you'll have some protection. So you'll be working with a therapist once you leave here. I am not sure, she said. The hospital is attempting to obtain monies from the Medicare Emergency Fund to cover hospital costs, but they are having difficulty without a Social Security number. One of the nurses informed me that if they do not pay the hospital, they may have to write it off as a loss. I doubt they'll pay for therapy. So, someone has to do something. They cannot simply dump you out on the streets with no food or shelter. You can't even obtain a job. You aren't telling me anything new. Morgan, I hope I have family or friends in the neighborhood that can take me in. That is what the photographs are for. The hospital should release me in 3 or 4 days. I know how long it takes to find someone. How about a shelter? I'm sure there's somewhere you can stay. Not as much as you think, she responded. The majority of them are for abused women and are now filled. Until now, she had remained stoic. But Morgan observed her emotions as well as his own journalistic experiences. He had never seen somebody more defenseless and fragile. He fully understood her wish to publish her photographs. She had absolutely no choice. He moved over to the small table beside her bed and took a napkin from the box. He held it out as he spoke. Thank you. She felt slightly ashamed about taking it. Morgan adjusted his camera to match the illumination in the room. Okay, stare directly at the camera. Great, he announced after shooting a few photographs. I'll edit out all of the tubes and medical equipment from the photo. That way, no one will know you are in the hospital. He took a couple more profile photos. That should be plenty, he informed her. They'll be in tomorrow's newspaper. I hope that helps. She thanked him honestly before they parted ways. Charlie stopped him as he was exiting the room. So, did you persuade her out of it? No, she has no option, Charlie. I only hope it works. She finds someone. Yes, I understand. Lieutenant Ashwood has sent someone from the station to contact shelters and emergency services, but to no success. All of the places are full. Morgan informed his wife that evening about a young woman who had amnesia. He merely shook his head and reflected on how dreadful it must be for her. We take so many things for granted and don't give them any thought. Could you imagine not knowing your own name? Not really, Bria responded. She didn't appear as empathetic as he did, and she didn't comprehend the entire scope of this girl's troubles, just as he hadn't before meeting the mystery woman. God, I hope her family recognizes her, Bria responded. If not, I'm sure they can place her in some kind of shelter. Yes, but she desperately needs family or friends. Someone who can help her remember. Morgan arrived at work first thing the next morning. Normally, his first stop was the newsroom to pick up assignments, but he walked past the elevator to the fourth floor and into the press room, where newspapers were still flowing off the production line. He grinned and waved to one of the cameramen, then took the newspaper. The fourth floor was half empty, but Andy was at his desk, sorting out his daily chores. He checked his watch when he saw his favorite photographer depart the elevator. "Morgan, you arrived about 1 hour early. Have you a date or something?" "Sort of." He chuckled. "I'd want to swing by the hospital and present the newspaper to the intriguing girl. I feel so bad for her. She can't recall anything. Not her name, nor where she is from. Nothing." "Yeah, I'm hoping these photographs will help her. Give me a few minutes, Morgan. I am still combing through these assignments." He confesses to changing the assignment cards on his desk. "I was going to give this to Ross, but since you are going to the hospital, I will deliver it to you at City Hall. There is a news conference set for 10 a.m. This will allow you to spend some time with your mysterious girlfriend. The boss will also be there." "Yep, that's great. Thank you, Andy." He went as soon as his boss handed him the remaining responsibilities. "Are you still around, Charlie?" "Hello, Morgan. Yeah. Still here all day? Not particularly fascinating. McMaster will relieve me at 330. It looks like she'll be released the day after tomorrow. Then I'll go back in the patrol car. Is that a newspaper?" "Yes," he said, opening it to the first page for Charlie to see. "Great. I hope this works." "Yes. Do you know if they have found a location for her? Just in case." Charlie said, "I don't think so." Morgan came in and was lying with her eyes closed, not wanting to be disturbed. He gently arranged the newspaper on the sheet. When she sensed his presence, she opened her eyes and smiled. "I think you'll want to see this," Morgan said, pointing to the newspaper. Her eyes brightened up, and she eagerly opened the newspaper to the front page. "Morgan, you're good at taking photographs. Thanks. Is it out yet, or is it right off the press? It will be ready in half an hour." "Okay, perfect. Wish me luck, Morgan. I wish. I genuinely hope this works for you. Everyone is pulling for you just in case. Do you have a backup plan?" "Not really. I know the cops are still trying to get me into a shelter, but as far as I know, they haven't had any success. Charlie, outside, informed me that numerous shelters had to be shuttered owing to a lack of money, while others remained overcrowded. They are collecting money for me so that I would have something to start with. That's an excellent idea. I could do the same thing at the newsroom. I'm not sure if I would ordinarily take charity." She spoke with a little smile. "But I'm in no position to refuse right now. Anything you can do will be highly appreciated." Morgan was ashamed that he hadn't thought of it himself. Time was running out, and he couldn't return to the newsroom until mid-afternoon. So when Morgan saw reporter Rick Buss at the mayor's news conference, he told him to start packing when he returned to the office. By the time Morgan returned to the newsroom, Rick had strolled around the building and raised more than $400. Morgan stopped by the bank during the day and added their own table to the piggy bank. After supper that night, he poured a glass of wine for himself and suggested they listen to music instead of watching TV. He waited until they hugged and were comfortable before starting the topic. He had been rehearsing at work. "We raised money for the woman with amnesia." "Oh, and what amount did we donate?" "A table? $100, she retorted angrily. "We can afford it, I understand. But don't you think it's a little too much for someone we don't know?" "Okay, that is it." He thought about it. "What happens now?" "No, you cannot adopt her," Bria snapped. He chuckled. "I wasn't intending to adopt her, but how about she stays here for a while?" Bria backed away from him, sat up, and looked him in the eyes. "You're nuts!" Morgan knew convincing her would be difficult, but he was determined to do his best. Only until she meets someone who can help her. He explained. "Honey, we chose this 3-bedroom apartment so that we could have a home office and your parents could have a room when they came to visit. They had visited here 4 times in 3 years, each time staying at a motel. This bed isn't. They are never used. Maybe someone will identify her from the newspaper photo. But if not, she is out of options, honey. She can't even obtain a room because she doesn't have identification. We can't just leave her to die somewhere, something in the ditch." He realized he was exaggerating a little. "Morgan, you know nothing about her. She may be a serial killer for that matter. Didn't you say her life could be in danger? What about us? If she lives here, we could become collateral damage. Damage? I've spoken with the police. They think she's safe. It's been a while since she was left in the hospital, and given the headlines surrounding her forgetfulness, they believe it is improbable that someone will decide to try to contact her after such a lengthy time. Furthermore, he added, no one will know she is present. Bria was still undecided. I don't like this, Morgan. What if she begins recalling things and goes crazy? I have heard that happens, honey, even with amnesia. She's one of the most sensible persons you'll ever meet. Trust me, if she starts remembering, she will not go insane. Morgan, I don't understand why this has suddenly become our problem. There are numerous charities and shelters for people like her. What about your cop friends? Can't any of them take her in? They are still trying to locate a place for her. However, no one has offered her a place to live yet. Nobody but my Lonely Hearts Club, shipwrecked. Please, darling, he asked. Bria laughed. His pitiful attempt to look like a lost puppy was successful. Morgan, you must promise me that if this does not work out, you will find her another place. He straightened his back. I swore. He spoke while drawing a cross on his chest. But I wouldn't be surprised if you and she were best friends. Yes, she grinned. You'll owe me. You know, I wouldn't mind dessert, he replied with a glint in his eye. How about a slice of pie? It took them only a few seconds to enter the bedroom and undress each other. It took several minutes before they were able to communicate again. I suppose this implies we'll have a lawyer, right? She asked. Morgan extended his hand, inviting her to hug. He turned to kiss her. I love you, he whispered. She smiled, and they fell asleep together. Morgan asked Charlie the following day if they had found a home for the patient. Not yet, he responded. At this time, the lieutenant used his ID to book her a motel room. She'll have to pay for it, but we raised about $600 for her, which will help her out a little. Morgan held up the envelope and declared, I have another $500 in here. Oh, God, how beautiful. This will provide her with a small cushion. What is in your bag? One of Briar's tracksuits. I wasn't sure what she'd wear when she left here. Charlie laughed. We conducted a lost and found search at the station, but there wasn't much there. We found a top and men's jeans that we thought would work, but I'm sure she prefers women's clothing. I also convinced Bria to spend some time with us. Are you kidding? No. We have an empty third bedroom in our apartment. We thought, heck, we are paying for it. So why not use it? Jesus, Morgan. Everyone at the station will be pleased to hear this. Do you think they'll be so thrilled that they'll occasionally drive past the apartment? Bria is concerned that someone is still hunting our mystery woman and that we are in danger. Oh, no issue, Charlie responded. I'll ask the lieutenant to establish a regular patrol. He was going to do this for whichever motel she was staying at, so I'm sure he wouldn't mind switching to your complex. It would be greatly appreciated. Charlie. Seeing a patrol car from time to time will make both women feel much better. The strange woman sat smiling as Morgan approached. While she couldn't hear what he and Charlie were saying, she recognized his voice. Hello, Morgan. Are you coming to see me off? Certainly. And I brought gifts, he replied, scooping up the bag. What's there? Well, I was wondering if you had anything to wear when you left here. So Bria, my wife, contributed some workout gear and footwear. I believe you and her are around the same size. Oh, Morgan, thank your wife for me. The cops gave me a man's shirt and jeans, which were too big for me. She remarked, I'd look like one of those scarecrows in a farmer's field. That is one more thing, Morgan said. You can thank her in person if you choose. What do you mean? We have a nice 3-room flat. The third bedroom was never used. Bria and I spoke about it and decided you could remain with us until you were back on your feet. She simply gazed at him, waiting for a joke. You're kidding, right? Not at all. It's entirely up to you, of course, but it will cost you nothing. Bria does not work, so you will not be alone, most of the time. She couldn't help but question whether his proposal was motivated by something other than love. After all, she'd only known him a few days. She looked for wickedness in his face, but only saw concern and tenderness. Are you certain, Morgan? You don't know me at all. Damn, I don't recognize myself. We are certain. Now I'm going to talk to Charlie while you get dressed. They'll be coming shortly to take you down. I'm going to take you clothes shopping. Oh, that reminds me. One of the guys at work assembled a collection for you, he said, removing an envelope from his pocket. Here's a little over $500 for you." "Oh, Morgan, this is too much," she said, feeling little overwhelmed. I noticed tears well up in her gorgeous green eyes. "Don't do that," he warned. "I think you deserve some luck for a change, don't you?" "Now get dressed," he said, exiting her chamber. "She's as ready as Charlie. Yes, she's getting dressed. I'm going to take her to the mall to buy clothes. Do you not work?" I traded with one of the night shift photographers. I wanted to make sure she and Bria knew one other well before I left them alone. "A good idea," Charlie agreed. At that moment, they noticed a nurse approaching in a wheelchair. She asked Morgan whether he was connected. Once they had explained the problem, the nurse left the two men in the corridor before entering the room to check on her patient. "Well, I don't see any white horses in the parking lot, but it appears that you have your own knight in dazzling armor," she said with a smile to the patient. "I notice you're already dressed and ready to leave us. To be honest, I am a little terrified. Yes, I can imagine, but the guy who will pick you up appears incredibly pleasant. He indicated his wife would be with you most of the time, so you appear to be in good hands. Yes, everyone was so kind. You are the cops, Morgan, please. Please thank everyone for me." "Definitely," the nurse reassured her. She continued, "Now sit down so we can get you out of here." She picked up the wheelchair. Charlie and Morgan followed the nurse as she wheeled the patient down to the first level. "I'll bring the car and meet you at the door," Morgan announced. Vito Generic, the head of a crime syndicate, makes an impressive entrance on the balcony of his Chicago high-rise apartment, which overlooks the lake. "Would you like to see me, Vito?" Tony, his assistant. Spinoza did not have an intimidating appearance, but as Vito's enforcer and killer, he was not to be underestimated. "Yes. Have you seen the photo of that woman in the newspaper? Who does not recall anything?" "Yes, I saw." "Do you suppose this was the one you shot when you killed Johnny Vito? Stop worrying. I am telling you." She couldn't recognize me at that distance. Even if she were alive, which I doubt she is. She's probably still lying in the jungle where she fell. Most likely, the larvae had already devoured half of it. "I hope you're correct." "I still can't believe you messed up like that, Vito. There was nothing I could do." "Jesus." We took him out on the most empty road around. This woman appeared out of nowhere. I shot at her once, and cars started approaching us from all sides. I couldn't help it. I tossed Johnny's body into the trunk and drove away. But I figured it all out, didn't I? Nobody will ever discover Johnny and the woman. When have you ever seen me? Miss Vito took a deep breath and let out a sigh. "I hope you're correct, Tony. For your own sake, I hope you are correct." Morgan noted that the mystery woman fit into the tracksuit almost as well as his wife. "Do you have money?" "Yes. Here they are," she said, holding up the envelopes. "Do you have any ideas where you want to go? Do you have any brands in mind?" "Not at all. I can't think of a single retailer that sells reasonably priced clothing." "I need to save as much as possible," she replied, glancing through the envelopes. "Okay, let's head to the Target. It's not far away. What name do you prefer?" She did not grasp the question. "Target will suffice, I suppose." "No. I mean for you. You will need to select a name, at least temporarily. We can't keep calling you a mysterious woman." "Oh, yes, I didn't consider that. I do not know." "What about Linda? Linda, this is it. Don't you prefer something more exotic, such as Lucretia or Barbarella?" She laughed. "No, that is enough. Just something easy that I can recall," she said with a little grin. "I hope I won't have to use it for long unless it's my real name." "Of course." She laughed softly again. Morgan questioned whether he could maintain a sense of humor in her circumstances. Morgan saw in the store that her hands-on approach extended to her buying habits. She chose 2 pairs of jeans that were appropriate for working around the house or garden, 2 sets of casual pants, and 2 lovely skirts. She then discovered a variety of blouses, each with a unique style that could be worn with any pair of pants or skirt. Morgan allowed her some privacy when it came to underwear, but advised her to go with something practical rather than lacy. Finally, she walked to the shoe area and selected a pair of sneakers and 2 pairs of casual low heels. Morgan believed she was going to cry as she paid the $300 charge. This amounted to about 1/3 of her whole income. Bria was waiting for them when they returned to their apartment. Morgan introduced them with Linda's new name. She was still blown away by their warmth and generosity. Bria, I'm not sure how I'll ever be able to thank you and Morgan enough. I never expected anything like this, she informed them both. Bria said, "We're glad we could help. Listen, Morgan needs to leave for work in an hour, so I'm making lunch for all of us. Are you hungry? Oh yes, I am starving. I just recall hospital meals." UG. Bria replied with a nasty expression. "Well, it's only soup and sandwiches. Nothing exceptional, but it's much better than hospital meals." Bria had never considered it before, but when they sat down to eat, she understood how difficult it was to communicate with someone who couldn't recall anything. What the hell are we talking about? She had a thought. Fortunately, Linda had a keen mind. "So, how long are you married?" 3 years, Bria replied cheerfully. 3 long and awful years. "Hey," Morgan interrupted her. He understood she was joking, but he needed to show his unhappiness. Bria laughed. "No, I am just kidding. I could not have asked for a greater man. This foolish idiot is my favorite person ever. I have only known him for a few days, but I agree. He was fantastic. Okay, ladies, you. Just..." Then his phone rang. He completed his sentence before responding. "You are going to give me a huge ego." "Hello, Morgan? Yes, that's me. Morgan, this is Jerry Wilson. This was another of Chicago's top officers. I understand the mystery woman is staying with you. Her name is Linda." "Yes, she's here now." "Linda, is her memory returning?" "No, she chose this name for herself. We couldn't continue calling her." "Hello, you," he remarked, looking at her from across the table. "Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, my sister-in-law is a psychiatrist. I just got off the phone with her, and she is willing to work for her pro gratis. Her judgment is that the woman had a rough life, and that the shooting was only the latest in a series of tragedies. She feels that because her brain chose to block the moment she was shot, it also chose to block the rest of her life. She asked me how steady the woman is. She stated that when her memory returns, she will experience intense emotions. What are your thoughts, Morgan? Will she be able to bear such psychological pain?" "Wow. I do not know, Jerry. I need to sit down and talk about this with her. Did your sister-in-law say when she wants to begin treatment?" "No. And there is one more thing. She works in Des Plaines. If you or Bria cannot drive her, she will have to take public transportation. However, Stacy's workplace is only 2 blocks from the Amtrak station." "Yeah, I'm not sure how she'll take it. May I call you tomorrow?" "Of course. Here's her phone number. You can phone her immediately." "A good idea. Wait a second. Honey, could you just fetch me a pen and paper?" Bree sprang up and returned from her home office a few seconds later, setting her belongings on the table in front of Morgan. "Thank you, sweetie." "Okay, Jerry. Dictate." He jotted down the psychiatrist's name, phone number, and office address while the rest of the table waited to see what all the excitement was about. "Thank you, Jerry. If this succeeds, we will all be grateful to you." Time was running out. Morgan had to go to work, so he summarized the chat. It was Jerry, another Chicago officer. His sister-in-law is a psychiatrist and has offered to help you retrieve your memories for free. However, it may not be as easy as it appears. I have to go, but we should talk about it tonight when I come back, okay? "Yes," Linda almost yelled in delight. Bria put a soothing hand on Linda's. "Oh, that would be wonderful," she commented. When he returned home that night, the 3 of them sat down to talk about the call. Morgan wanted to underline how terrible this would be for her. Will she be able to deal with the traumas discovered during the sessions? Linda remained firm, willing to do whatever it needed to discover her identity and recover her memory. The following day, Bria assisted her in making the call. They were both sitting at the kitchen table when she dialed the number and set it to speaker so they could both converse. The secretary picked up the second call, Dr. Wahlberg's office. "Yes, hello. My name is Brianna Johnson. I'm calling on behalf of a woman who has amnesia and cannot recall who she is. The doctor's hubby. His brother instructed us to contact." "Oh, yes, the doctor said you could call. I know she wants to talk to you, but she's currently with a patient." "Is the amnesiac woman with you now?" "Yes, she lives with us." "And my hubby." "Okay, would it be handy if the doctor could phone you back in 20 minutes? Bria answered, "That will be fine," before hanging up the phone. Linda stood up and approached the coffee kettle. Her hands shook as she poured them each a cup. "Are you nervous?" Bria makes jokes. Linda did not take this lightly. "I'm just not sure what I'll do if this doesn't work. I can't stay here my whole life. I'm not even sure if I have any talents or degrees." Damn it, Bria, I could be a psychiatrist and not realize it, she mocked. Bria laughed, lost in thought. That would be funny, right? Look, no matter what you do or who you are, I am confident you will find out. I am, of course, not a doctor, but I know that they have made significant advances in medicine. They can even hypnotize you and restore your memory in this manner. She recalled something she had seen on television as they sat and drank coffee. All they could do was wait. Bria watched the minute hand on the kitchen clock, feeling as nervous as Linda. After what seemed like an eternity, Brian's phone rang. She pressed the speakerphone icon and responded. The doctor introduced herself. Bria started the introduction from their side, informing the doctor that she was on speakerphone and Linda was listening. Dr. Wahlberg emphasized the emotional anguish she expected the patient to endure. Linda bravely stated her willingness to do whatever it took. They then talked about scheduling and logistics. Linda realized how difficult this could be by the end of their conversation. She scheduled an initial appointment for the following day, and Bria agreed to drive her. When Morgan returned home later that night, Linda had already gone to bed, but Bria had told him everything. She also acknowledged that he was correct about their developing friendship. She admired Linda's strength and determination. "I'm not sure how she copes," she told Morgan. "I would be completely terrified." Linda walked slowly towards the kitchen the next morning after Morgan had already started work. Bria was sitting at the table. "You look tired. Didn't sleep well?" "No, I just couldn't turn off my brain last night. I kept thinking about today," she said, walking over to the coffee pot and pouring herself a cup. "I also realized that I forgot to buy something at the store." "What exactly? Rob?" "Oh, I have an old robe hanging in the back of my closet. You can take it." "Really? Are you certain? You've already done so much for me." "He's yours," Bria said. "Thank you. I hate getting fully dressed before showering. Has Morgan already left?" "Oh, yes, a long time ago. He starts at 7 when he's on the day shift." The two women talked for a little while longer before Linda headed to the shower. When she returned, there was an old but adequate terry robe hanging on the corner of her bed, along with 2 lipsticks and some eyeshadow. It took Brian about 35 minutes to get to Dr. Wahlberg's office. They arrived about 15 minutes early when Bria parked the car. Linda just sat there looking out the window, not saying a thing. Bria finally broke the stillness. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No, that it's not essential. I'm just a little scared, I guess, maybe." "No, I'm going to do it." She affirmed more for herself. "Just being here. I mean, what if I find out something really bad about myself? I seriously doubt that is the case. Now go. You can do it," Bria told her. Linda turned her head and glanced at her new acquaintance. "You're right," she remarked with a sigh. "So what are you planning to do while I'm there? You won't be waiting here in the parking lot, correct?" "No. There's an excellent retail mall nearby. I'll probably just walk past a window shop. I will be returning in an hour to take you up." "Okay," Linda said, opening the door. "See you in an hour." Bria saw her friend straighten her back and stride confidently into the building. Linda went inside and glanced at Dr. Wahlberg's office number. A nice young woman greeted her as she entered the office. "Hi, you must be Linda," she replied with a warm smile. The new patient smiled back. "For the time being, that is who I am." She chuckled. The young woman tapped a button on the intercom. "Dr. Linda has arrived for an appointment." A woman in her mid-40s stepped from the door behind the secretary's desk, dressed quite professionally. She approached Linda with a grin and an extended hand. "Hello, Linda. I'm Dr. Wahlberg. Please come in," she said, indicating the way. I offer her a drink of water. Before beginning the therapy, the doctor made sure the patient was comfortable. "Linda, have you remembered anything about your past since our last conversation?" "Nothing is fine. As we proceed through our sessions, your memory will most likely begin to return in rapid bursts. It can be as short as a few seconds or as long as several episodes. It is rare for complete recollection to return at once. This usually occurs in chunks. If you remember something briefly, attempt to figure out what prompted the recollection. Something you saw or heard, a fragrance or a sense of déjà vu. Something triggered the memory. Always have a diary with you. If you recall something, write it down, along with what you believe caused it. This was extremely encouraging for Linda. Her doctor appeared knowledgeable. Doctor, what are the chances? You know I'll remember. Very good. In fact, she responded immediately. There may be things that your mind refuses to recall, but I am confident that we can reconstruct the majority, if not all, of your past life. My friend mentioned hypnotherapy. Yes, it is known as regression therapy, but there are several different types of treatment and each person responds differently. We'll start with the most common method. This is known as cognitive therapy. It's like mental exercise. I'll give you things to read, puzzles to solve, tasks to complete, and situations in which you must make decisions like these. At first, it may not appear to be related to memory retrieval, but as the mind expands its thought processes to cope with the additional load, it stimulates the subconscious and awakens dormant parts of the mind. This takes time, and I do not want you to become impatient. You have to trust me. Can you? Yes, of course, Linda replied. Can you guess the time frame when I will be able to remember something? My real name would be nice. No, I'm afraid not. It could happen next week, next month, or next year. Are you ready to start? Absolutely, she replied enthusiastically, for the rest of the hour. The doctor played association games with her from the answers Linda gave. The doctor realized that the young woman had indeed lived a difficult life for the first time since waking up from her coma. Linda felt hopeful as they concluded the session. Bria was waiting for her in the waiting room. Well, how did everything go? Well, I was born in Oklahoma. My father is a cattle farmer. She found it difficult to keep a serious face when she saw how break. Her jaw dropped and she started laughing. God, Linda, you tricked me, I understand. She laughed again. You swallowed it like candy. Linda turned to the secretary, who was also giggling, and made the next appointment. On the way home, Linda asked to stop at the store to buy a diary and some pens. As soon as they returned to the apartment, Linda changed from her skirt to jeans and grabbed the vacuum cleaner. They made a great team. Linda cleaned up while Bria prepared dinner. After a couple of weeks, everything returned to normal. Bria took Linda to the doctor and then walked around the mall until it was time to pick her up. Since they passed by a grocery store on their way back, they stopped in to do some shopping. They had 2 full bags in the back seat when they returned home from Linda's 5th session. I'll take 1 bag. You take the other, Bria said as she got out of the car. By the time Linda walked around to the other side of the car, Bria had already grabbed the first bag and headed toward the entrance. Linda leaned into the back door of the car to grab her second bag. When she heard the voice of a young man standing 2 cars away, looking in the other direction. I'm telling you, it's her, alive and well. Hey, you're the one who said the bitch was dead anyway. Linda instantly saw a vision of a dark guy hovering over her. She shouted, dropped her purse, and hurried past Bria, who had just opened the door to the flat. Linda? What happened? She had no idea what had happened, but Linda was panicking. Bria hastily laid the groceries down and followed Linda into her room. Linda sat on her bed, wrapping her arms over her knees and pressing them tightly to her chest. She swayed back and forth, just staring into space. Bria sat down next to her and slowly began to stroke her back with soothing gestures. Linda, what happened? Did something happen in the parking lot? Linda did not answer, continuing to stare into space. Did you remember something? Linda stared at her companion and nodded slowly. Oh, God. Really? Do you recall what happened to you? I overheard him. This is exactly what he stated. The bitch is already dead. I overheard him. He was only in the parking lot. What? You stay here. Do not move with that. Bria dashed back to the parking lot to see if she could see anyone, but by then, the person had vanished. Her car's back door remained open, so she returned to the apartment with another bag of goods, locking the door behind her. Linda appeared to settle down little when Bria returned to her. There is no one else there. Have you seen who it was? No, I am sorry. For God's sake, I'm not going to apologize. Linda, this is a breakthrough. You recalled something. Linda adopted an odd expression. What happened? Do you recall anything else, Corey? She mumbled. I believe my name is Corey. She scowled with concentration. She then smiled slightly. Yes, I'm certain Corey is Corrine, she nearly yelled. Corrine! Corrine! She tried to recall. I can't recall my last name. Damn! She roared with angry frustration. What are you doing now? Bria began dialing the number. I am calling your therapist. She may want you to return to her right away. Unfortunately, Dr. Wahlberg had a full schedule, but she instructed them to ensure Linda documented everything she saw that triggered the memory. Bria then phoned Morgan. She rarely called him at work, so he knew it was important. He pulled over to the side of the road and said, "What happened, honey?" "Everything's fine, darling. Linda's name is Corrine." She continued the story, explaining the entire thing. Morgan told her to call the police right away and have them send someone to the apartment to take a statement. The lieutenant and patrolman were still present when Morgan returned home. He was surprised to see someone of such high rank. Morgan had only met the lieutenant a few times. Morgan met the patrolman after the lieutenant introduced him. Morgan, alarmed, sat down with the others. "What is going on, Lieutenant? Do you think the person who shot her lives in this complex? It is possible?" Morgan. At that point, another person entered the apartment. Uniform, officer. "Sir, I believe we found the car with the video." The lieutenant looked up. "Video? Yes, sir. From a hospital. The vehicle that took her up." The lieutenant stood up excitedly and looked at the other cop. "You stay here with them," he barked. Morgan followed the two officers outside. "Sir, it's the same make and model, same color, and it has the same Motley Crue bumper sticker. I'm sure it's the same car. Have you checked the number yet?" "No, sir, not yet." "Well, then do it." The senior officer looked at Morgan. "We may have been very lucky. Have you seen who drives this car?" "No, I have no idea." It didn't take long before the other officer returned, holding a little notepad. "Sir, the car was registered by Brian Kelsey. He is 19 years old, but he does not live here. He lives at 6420 South Columbia." "Damn," the lieutenant replied. Morgan was also dissatisfied. "So what now?" "Well, we'll have to keep an eye on her until someone comes out and takes the wheel. That is all we can do." "What about Lynn?" "I have to get used to her true name." "How about Corey? Should we put her in a motel for a while? I believe this will be the finest solution." "Yes. Now that we know the crooks are still in the area, I can secure her safety. So the department will pay for the lodging. I will place a female officer in the room with her. Why don't you pack her belongings?" Morgan turned and entered the apartment, while the lieutenant turned to his patrolman. "Hide somewhere out of sight but close enough to keep an eye on the car. Our guy is most likely dating someone from this complex, so check to observe who comes out of which flats. There are also radio calls requesting a search warrant for his vehicle and home. We are seeking for firearms. I'm not sure if finding it will help us. We don't have a bullet for ballistic testing, but perhaps we can use it to terrify someone and extract a confession." "Yes, sir," the cop responded. He instantly got into his patrol car, parked in the back of the parking lot where he couldn't be seen, and raised his radio to get a warrant. Meanwhile, Carrie began packing her belongings. It did not take her long. She didn't have many possessions. The lieutenant talked over the radio and organized everything. Carrie emerged from the bedroom with the suitcase that Bria had lent her. "Carrie, I'm going you to the motel that we occasionally use as a safe haven. A female cop will meet us there. She'll spend the night with you. I hope you can come home tomorrow. Our suspect does not live here, but we must get him before the end of the night or tomorrow morning." He turned to face Morgan and Bria. "And how about you? Do you want someone to stay in the flat with you in case someone comes by?" Morgan stared at his wife to find out what she wanted. She smiled. She is confident in her hubby. "We can manage it," she assured Lieutenant Ashwood. "Are you certain?" "Yes, thank you, Lieutenant, but we'll be okay," Morgan confirmed. "Fine." He stared at Carrie. "Ready?" "Yes," she responded, nodding. A policewoman greeted them at the motel. She was normally dressed in uniform, but when she received the assignment, she changed into civilian clothing. They were assigned a room on the second floor, which both policemen thoroughly inspected to ensure that everything was in order. The lieutenant was about to leave when he noticed he was hungry. He checked his watch and realized it was nearly 7 o'clock. His shift finished a few hours ago. "Lady, I'm starving. You two women were likewise hungry." A menu from a nearby pizza was placed on the small corner table close to the telephone. It hardly took a minute to settle on the toppings before the order was placed. The lieutenant left about 9 o'clock. Carrie was curious. "Janet, is the lieutenant single?" "I did not see the wedding ring." Janet understood she shouldn't share her boss's personal information, but they wanted to talk about something. "He recently divorced. Quite ugly." She accused him of everything, even extorting free services from ladies with easy virtue. All kinds of horrible things. I know it was only vengeance. Believe me, there are a few of us who are not paragons of morality. But the lieutenant is not among them. He's definitely one of the nice guys. His wife was discovered cheating. Sometimes people are so foolish. We have been trained to identify lies. Despite knowing this, she continued to lie to his face. He immediately understood. It took him less than a week to discover who she was sleeping with and capture them in the act. "It's sad," Carrie said. "He seems like a lovely man. He is such a... It's not easy to marry a cop, especially a nice one. I sometimes feel terrible for my hubby. I know he worries all the time. He worries every time I walk out the door that he won't see me again. This causes stress. Many of us are also difficult to speak with. We are trained to keep our cool and constantly try to diffuse the situation. But we're still human. Let me tell you what happens when you try to calm someone down on the street and they yell at you, call you vile names, and spit in your face." She waited for a deep breath. "Let's just say it's quite difficult to maintain composure. We need to do it. But you've been boiling with rage all day. So by the time you get home, you're prepared to rip someone's head off. And who receives it in full? Yes, your beloved husband. It's unfair, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Chad, this is my spouse. A true prince. I often wonder how he puts up with me," she remarked with a little smile. "Yes, I do understand. I'm not sure if I want to be married by digging." She paused for a second. "I wonder whether I am married." She chuckled. "Yes, we all have troubles, right? I would not want to be in your position either. I heard you were beginning to remember something." "Okay, just a little. I believe my name is Corinne. I'm not exactly sure how I know this. I don't remember anyone calling me that. It's more a sensation than anything else. When I heard the guy's statements today, something came to mind. These were the precise words I heard prior to Amnesia. I remembered this, and then the name occurred to me. I can't explain. Do you see Jerry, his wife's physician sister? I know he told her about you a few times, Dr. Wahlberg. Yes, I've been seeing her since I left the hospital, which reminds me, we called her when I had this outbreak. I have an appointment tomorrow afternoon. We need to apprehend this man by then." "I do not believe there will be any complications," Janet confirmed. She turned out to be correct. The following morning, the duty sergeant apprehended the lieutenant at Ashwood, as soon as he walked in the door. "Lieutenant, we've got the guy from last night. His name is Brian Kelsey. He is 19 years old, but he claims he was at work when the mysterious woman heard the voice." The lieutenant responded, "Her name is Corey. Have we investigated his alibi?" "Unfortunately, yes, Lieutenant. Approximately an hour ago, but I didn't want to let him go until I spoke with you." "Fine. Have we learned who he was visiting?" "Yeah, a friend of his. He checked the report. Carl Langford is 23. He had lived there for over 2 years. Have we brought him?" "No, I do not think so. Damn that. No one considered that if the voice Corey heard wasn't the one we were looking for, it was most likely the one he was visiting. Damn, we positively identified the car that drove her to the hospital. We spotted her in the same parking area where she had overheard the exchange. This is not a coincidence. Send a couple of patrolmen to find this Langford person and pray he's still there. Tell them that if he refuses to go freely, he will be arrested under suspicion of aggravated circumstances." "Yes, sir. Should I let the other one go?" "Hell no." "What time did they bring him inside?" He checked his list again at 1:15 a.m. Then we have till 1:15 the next night to either release or charge him. "Has the lawyer shown up yet?" "No, sir. He declined to seek legal counsel." "Okay. Detective Noble is in place." "Yes, sir." "Okay, bring the prisoner into the questioning room and instruct the Nobles to give him a good look. He must be engaged somehow. Maybe the Nobles can split it. If not, we'll keep him till we get his buddy. Then we'll play one against the other. I will be in my office. Please let me know as soon as Langford is brought in. It will be finished, sir." As soon as the lieutenant turned his back, the sergeant called Detective Nobles and told him what had happened. While the investigator instructed Kelsey to be transported to the interrogation room, the sergeant radioed patrol officers to go pick up another suspect, while all of this was happening. Janet and Cora were getting ready for the day as Cora showered. Janet called the station for an update. She met with the sergeant, who explained all that had transpired and promised to send someone to change her. "Don't worry, Sergeant. My spouse is out of town on business for a few nights, so I am alone right now." Cora will require transportation to her therapist later, so I will just remain with her today. I cannot give you overtime when someone else is available. I know she agreed. I am not seeking for overtime. Okay, I'll phone you later to let you know what's happening. Corey had just gotten out of the shower when Janet terminated the conversation. I just spoke to my sergeant. We've got one of the guys in custody. We obtained a DNA sample from the cup he drank from. Now they're on their way to collect the other one. The person who lives in your complex. Hopefully, we can obtain his DNA. Similarly, once we find a match for the samples, they will be ours. We know that there were 3 of them, so if we can persuade them to turn in the 3rd, the entire process will be completed. Corey put up a brave face. But she couldn't shake her worry. She almost collapsed on the bed. She sighed in relief, closed her eyes, and smiled as she laid on her back. God, you have no clue how liberated I feel right now. Janet giggled. I will still be with you today. I will take you to see your therapist later. Okay, fine. Can I use your phone to contact Bri and tell her she doesn't need a ride while you get in the shower? Certainly. Can we go grab breakfast once you're done? I am starving. Absolutely, give me 10 minutes. Bri sounded upbeat when Corey told her the news. Okay, thank you for telling me. I was looking out the window when you called. There are 3 patrol cars there. I suppose they're here to arrest that person. I can't believe he's been living here this long. Yeah, it's a little terrifying. Hopefully they capture the 3rd one. Then at least some of my nightmares will be over. All I'll have to worry about then is regaining my memories. I have no doubt that it will happen, Corey. Hell, it's already beginning to recover slightly. Call me later and let me know if you're going to remain another day or return tonight. Okay, I will do that. By Janet. Choose a breakfast spot. A modest diner that was popular among the officers. She assumed that if someone came for Corey, they would be insane to do something there. They returned to the hotel and talked for a while. Corey discovered more about the officer's family life. They were preparing for Corey's therapy session when she checked her purse. Damn, she cursed. What happened? Oh, with all the excitement last night, I left my journal at the apartment. There's not much there, but Dr. Wahlberg advised me to keep it with me at all times in case I remembered anything. I was also going to utilize it to take notes during sessions. Would you mind if we did? Let's go and pick him up along the way. No, I do not mind. Janet checked her watch. We'd best hurry. When the girls reached the residence, Corey knew Morgan was at work and was unsure if Bri was home, so she used the key she had been given. Go grab your diary, I'll wait outside the door, Janet said. Corey headed down the hall and around the corner to the bedrooms. When she heard Bri speaking on the phone, she sounded annoyed. Look, Bob, I told you I wasn't going out with you anymore. I do not care. I still believe you drugged me into that motel because I don't recall drinking much. So yes, I do recall. And yeah, the sex was incredible, despite all of her other troubles. Corey didn't think about what she'd heard. She just reacted. Are you a cheater? Her elevated voice conveyed astonishment and dissatisfaction. Breeze turned in the direction of the pitiful cry, and she spotted Corey standing in the doorway. Oh, damn, she said. Bob, I have to leave, she remarked before passing out. Before she could react, Corey continued, perplexed. Are you cheating on Morgan? I can't believe this. You have the most loving and dedicated husband on the earth. And you. She could not say it again. She stood there, staring at her astonished companion. Corey's head spun like a pinwheel in a hurricane. Her eyes began to water as the silence increased, and her head became foggy. Corey turned and entered her room to collect the diary. Bri waited for her when she returned. Corey, please wait. Let me clarify. There's no need to explain, Bri. I heard you over the phone, but you misinterpreted. I don't. Not right now. Bri, not now. I can't, Corey. Leave me alone. I need to go. And with that, she pushed by Bri and went to the door. Janet noticed her and immediately felt concerned. Is everything okay? What happened? Nothing, Corey responded. Just let's go, she said as she walked by the female cop and out into the parking lot. When they got in the car, Janet asked Corey again, Are you sure everything is fine? Did something happen down there that I should know about? Corey remembered Janet freely discussing the lieutenant's family troubles, and he didn't want to give her anything else to talk about. No, Janet. I apologize if I was impolite. There is no need to worry, honestly. Okay, Janet responded. The stroll to Dr. Wahlberg's office was silent. Janet entered with Corey and announced that she would be waiting in the waiting area. Dr. Wahlberg instantly detected Corey's depression. "You appear upset. Are you starting to remember something else?" she asked. Corey fiddled with her hands unconsciously as she sat down. Her mind was so preoccupied that she almost didn't hear the doctor's query. No. Whatever we talk here will remain private, even if it does not involve my recollection, right? Yes, that's correct. What is bothering you? The doctor paid close attention to Corey. The delighted young woman nibbled her nail as she gazed at the floor. She was playing with her hands and biting her nails, which she hadn't done during previous visits. Something was seriously bothering her. Corey took a big breath before beginning. "The people I'm currently staying with are lovely. I was a complete stranger to them, but they invited me to stay, took me shopping. I did not pay for groceries or rent, nothing. They literally offered me a place to stay. Life is free until I figure it out. How can I thank someone for something like that?" Dr. Wahlberg realized it wasn't simply about thanking her friends. "Do you feel compelled to thank them right now?" "Isn't this something that can be accomplished over time?" Corey raised her head and stared at the doctor, tears in her eyes. "I just discovered out she's cheating on him," she remarked in a flat voice, despite her years of experience as a doctor. This took her by surprise. "Oh," she said. "What shall I do?" Corey pleaded. "If not for them, I'd be walking the streets right now. Everything in me tells that as Morgan's buddy, it is my job to inform him. But how can I harm the life of the person who helped me? So what about her? What about Bri? Am I? Shouldn't she also owe it?" She started crying harder. "Why? Why is she doing this to him? He is quite sweet and adores her. If I tell him, he will die." "Doctor." By this point, Corey's tears had started to flow steadily. Dr. Wahlberg rose up and proceeded to the table in the corner of the room, pouring a glass of water. "Here, take this," she said, offering it to Corey, taking a box of Kleenex from the table. The doctor positioned them next to the crying patient. It took Corey a few minutes to relax. "What should I do, doctor? You presumably see similar things all the time at work. Tell me what to do, please." "I wished I could, Corey. I am not a marital specialist. It is not my field. But as you mentioned, these things happen. Unfortunately, I've never discovered a one-size-fits-all approach. There are countless reasons why people cheat on their wives, and it is never just one thing. Typically, there are a dozen reasons that combine to create a perfect storm of emotions. It can take years or happen on the spur of the moment. I'm very upset at her." Corey burst. "We became really good friends, but how can I still be her buddy after this? Whether I say it or not, how can I continue to live there?" She shakes her head. "Regarding this, I still have no other place to live, but it does not seem proper to me to remain silent and continue living there." "Lord!" she shouted. "What shall I do?" Dr. Wahlberg did not enjoy seeing someone in such an emotional state. On the other side, such psychological stress may help Corey retrieve his memories. "Corey, I can't tell you what to do, but I can make a few suggestions. I realize you've only known these folks for a short time, but it appears you have two pals in jeopardy. If they were my pals, I would try to gather all of the information and figure out what is at the root of the problem. Every word spoken and every action taken by a person has a reason to help us grasp the problem. You need to grasp the motivations. The second thing I can add is that, in my experience, an upset spouse is usually more inclined to forgive when the guilty party admits it, rather than when they find out from someone else. Having stated that, you must do what you believe is right." The doctor allowed Corey a few minutes to ponder her words and wipe away her emotions before speaking again. "Sorry, but we really need to discuss what happened yesterday. Try to relax and describe what happened when Corey was talking about her recollections." Lieutenant Ashwood and Detective Noble interrogated their two suspects in separate rooms. The lieutenant was tall and lean, with a threatening aspect, whereas aristocrats were the reverse. He was just 5 feet, 9 inches tall, chubby, and always smiling. That's why Brian was taken aback when the smiling detective slammed his hand down on the table and stared at him menacingly. "Do you all know about this? We already have DNA samples from you and your companion that match the ones you left on that poor girl. We have you cleaned. Tell me who the third person is and where I may find weapons, and I'll speak with the prosecution about making a deal. Guns. What weapons? We did not have any weapons. Okay, yes, we did it. But if she was shot, it was not us, I swear, he exclaimed. She was wobbling along the side of the road when we noticed her. She fell in front of our car. We went out to see whether she was okay, but she appeared to be near death. So instead of calling an ambulance, you decided to have fun, joked the nobility. Brian hung his head in shame, and tears filled his eyes. If you were going to take her to the hospital, why didn't you call an ambulance after you were done? I wanted to, but the others were unwilling to take the chance. We dragged her back to the forest and abandoned her there. No one expected she'd live. So what happened? How did you decide to take her to the hospital? I felt quite horrible. The boys dropped me off at home. I was unable to handle what we did. I went back to check if she was still alive. When I arrived, she was still breathing, only barely breathing. I brought her to my car and drove her to the hospital. Did they know what you did? No. They'd beat me up if they knew. Instinct. Nobles had informed him that the guy was telling the truth. He paused the recorder, removed the tape, and handed him a paper and pen. Please write down everything you told me, including the identity of the third person who was with you in Langford. The detective has left the room. The duty sergeant noticed him going towards him. Did you receive recognition? Yes, but not all of them. The guy claims she was wandering down the road and denies shooting her. Crap, yes, I understand. That suggests there is still someone out there who may wish to finish what they started. Where is the lieutenant? He returned to his workplace. The other guy quickly requested a lawyer. Okay, thank you. When the lieutenant heard what the guy had to say, he reacted similarly to the sergeant. Damn. Do you honestly believe he is telling the truth? I've just requested a search warrant for Langford's apartment. I do not think you will find anything, but... Okay, let them check. Agreed. Nobles. Yeah. Have you gotten the third guy's name? I advised him to include it in his statement. I am sure he will. He gives up entirely. He have a conscience, at the least. He claims that if the others knew he had taken her to the hospital, they would beat him to death. Half dead. I'm confident he saved the girl's life. He turned and approached the door. I'll bring you the guy's statement as soon as he finishes. Great job, John. As he exited the office, the lieutenant commended the investigator, smiled, and waved goodbye. The guy's older brother, Zach Kelsey, finished third. Both brothers were still living with their parents, who were horrified by their son's behavior and cooperated with police when they searched the home. They discovered a .22 caliber handgun, but forensics revealed it had not been used in many years. They had assumed that the shooter and the criminals were interchangeable. They realized that this was not the case. Even though the culprits were behind bars, the inquiry persisted. After her therapy appointment, Carrie opted to stay at the hotel with Janet for another night before returning to Morgan and Bria's apartment the following day. Despite discovering what had happened at the police station, she thanked Janet for her assistance and protection as she exited the car, taking a deep breath before entering and confronting her. Another difficulty. Bria was still in her robe at approximately 10:30 a.m. She knew a confrontation was coming, so she spent the morning in tears. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee when Corey stepped in. I'm here, she said. Corey went into her room first and threw her suitcase on the bed. She listened to what the therapist taught her and devised a strategy. At least she knew what she was going to say. She strolled over to the coffee pot and poured herself a cup before settling in at the opposite end of the kitchen table. For a moment, the two women just looked at each other without saying anything. Finally, Bria broke the silence. You went away without giving me the opportunity to explain. Bria. What is there to explain? I overheard you on the phone. You had only heard one side of the conversation. I did not cheat on Morgan, at least not physically. Bria, you stated that you were inebriated when you had sex with him at the motel. Corey exclaimed. No, I did not say that. First and foremost, the intercourse occurred before Morgan and I reconciled, and I did not claim to be inebriated. I said he drugged me. I can't prove it, but I know it's true. Corey had no idea how to reply to this. She merely sat and seemed bewildered. Listen, I know Morgan likes to tell everyone that we were high school sweethearts. And although that is true, we never did anything. After graduation, we just parted ways. He was preoccupied with his job at the newspaper whilst I attended City College. We met new folks. There was no actual breakup or anything like that. We only recently stopped seeing each other after a few years. During this time, I was with various men, one of them. So you and Morgan do not. I realize it's none of my business, but I assumed you were each other's first. No. Morgan was overly shy. I even tried to push him a few times, but he never caught the message. I did not want him to believe I was a slutty lady, so I never persisted. I hadn't had sex before I started seeing another guy. 5 months after graduation. He was a few years older. I lasted 3 dates, but I knew if I didn't give in, he'd leave me. So that was Bob. Was he your first? No. To be honest, I can't remember the guy's name. Everyone claims you never forget your first experience, but I forgot Bob was the second guy I had sex with. He was significantly more aggressive. He brought me to bed on our first date. We dated for several months. In fact, we were still dating when I saw Morgan again. I'd been dating them both for approximately a month. By then, I'd rekindled my affections for Morgan, so I told Bob that I was breaking up with him. It was the last time I saw him, until recently. Corey was still baffled. Okay. Something occurred. I heard you say you wouldn't date him anymore. Something is going on between you two. Bri's gaze turned guilty as she continued. We met a few months ago at the mall. We stopped by the food court at lunchtime. It had been over 4 years since we had seen each other, so we had a lot to discuss. He congratulated me when I informed him that she had married Morgan and that he was still single. He just returned from California. He works for a computer business, which assigned him there as a regional sales manager. He claimed his performance was so exceptional that they summoned him back to headquarters in Chicago and placed him in command of the training program. When we concluded, he gave me his business card and instructed me to call him later. He offered to treat me to lunch at a finer restaurant. I had no intention of calling him at the moment, but about a month later, I was going to meet a friend for lunch. I was already dressed appropriately and looking forward to it. She called at the last minute to say she couldn't make it. I was quite disappointed. I thought about Bob and decided to find out if he would be accessible in such a short period. So one lunch developed into several more, and when Morgan left to work the night shift, the lunches became dinner. I knew I was crossing a line, but I had no intention of sleeping with him. Carrie shakes her head. So you were dating this guy while poor Morgan was working? Bri, I thought you knew not to date a person who can drug you for sex. Carrie, I had no idea he was planning anything like that. We last had dinner a few weeks before yours moved. He wanted to go dancing. I had my concerns, but I eventually consented. I told him I barely had an hour and needed to hurry home. I'm not sure how we got from the club to the motel, but the next thing I remember is Bob hugging me as we walked down the corridor to our room. I know I must have been out of control since I was so happy. My intellect was begging me to stop, but my body wouldn't wait. Fortunately, someone entered the room and stopped the situation before it worsened. Too far away. I'm still not sure who it was. I suppose he worked in the hotel. He undoubtedly observed me in the lobby, realized that I couldn't contain myself, and grew suspicious. He got me out of there, put me in a taxi, and drove me home. Carrie experienced some relief. It wasn't as horrible as she imagined. So you have not seen him since the motel incident? Honestly? Honestly. Okay then. Listen, I spoke with Dr. Wahlberg about this. I believe she is a very intelligent woman who has undoubtedly assisted others in similar situations. She claims that confessing and demonstrating real repentance would increase your chances of saving your marriage significantly. She said that it would be much more difficult if he found out from someone else. I can't, Carrie. Yes, you can. I'll help you. I'll be there when you inform him. And I will battle beside you to rescue your marriage. Bri, I owe you both more than I can possibly repay. Of course, I do not want to damage your marriage, but attempting to keep this hidden will bring complications that will eventually kill it. I'm sure Bri was thinking the same thing, but couldn't see a way to express it, even though she did not sleep with him. She knew Morgan would think her relationship with Bob was cheating. It would spell the end of her marriage. God, she rebuked herself. How could I possibly be so stupid? Her mind was filled with senseless pain. She felt the salty dampness of her anguish run down her cheeks and into the corners of her mouth. I need some time, she implored. Please, Bri, do not wait too long. Don't you believe this Bob guy will tell Morgan to take revenge for their breakup? Hell no. He does not care about me enough to seek vengeance. Besides, he's probably scared Morgan will come after him. Then when you're ready, let's sit down and discuss how to best approach the confession. If you like, I'll speak with Dr. Wahlberg again. Perhaps she can counsel us. Meanwhile, you can browse the internet. Yes, that is a good concept. Thanks. Bri's voice was filled with genuine thanks that night. When Morgan returned home, he sensed a tiny tension in the air, but he inquired if everything was fine. Both women agreed. He heard about the arrests of 3 offenders and wondered if he was misinterpreting the situation. It was most likely a relief. That night, Corey had a dream that she was being hauled out of the car. She heard the door slam and the tires squeal as the car drove away. She felt chilly, alone, and terrified. Then she realized she was still awake. "I remember," she said to herself. She swung her legs off the bed and sat up. She buried her head in her hands, anxiously trying to remember more. Her eyes tightened as she concentrated. She could feel her heart beating and was crying. It was her mother. She was in trouble. No. She spoke aloud as the memories faded. She hurriedly reached for the journal on her nightstand and began writing everything down while the memories were still fresh in her memory. After she finished, she sat down and sobbed quietly. What happened? Whatever happened to her mother? It was worse to not know who got her out of the automobile than to forget entirely. She lay down again and finally fell asleep, weeping. The first thing Corey did when she awoke the next morning was check her diary to ensure it wasn't a dream. Everything was there, screaming and weeping. When someone dragged her out of the car and closed the door, she felt scared and lonely. She began to wonder if she truly wanted her memory restored. Until now, I've only had bad memories. The aroma of coffee drew her to join Bri in the kitchen. She slipped on her robe and proceeded to the coveted drink. "Oh!" she cried and turned her back to tighten the robe and fasten the belt. "Sorry, Morgan, I didn't realize you were home. You're normally at work at this point." Morgan smiled at the brief glimpse of nudity. "Today is Saturday. I have the day off today and tomorrow. On Monday, I begin working the night shift." His schedule was unclear. She didn't even attempt to understand him. Corey blushed as she realized she had been unintentionally exposed. "Where is Bri?" she inquired, moving towards the coffee pot. "Getting dressed. She'll be out shortly." Corey took his cup and sat down. I'm starting to remember a little better." Morgan's eyes widened. "This is great. Yeah, I am not sure. It appears that something occurred to my mother when I was young. I also recall someone lifting me out of a car, but it feels more recent." Bri entered at the exact moment. "Honey." Corey told her that he was starting to remember things. She looked at her companion while pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Is this true?" "Yes, but so far all I've remembered is something awful. They're merely brief flashes. I can't even put things in context. I believed I was having a dream last night. I was half asleep just before falling asleep. I could hear the woman scream. Then I realized I was still awake. I believe it was my mother." "Oh God, Corey, that is dreadful," Bri replied. "Yes, I hope my entire life has not been like this. One horrible incident follows another. I was warned of this, but I didn't consider it." Corey was about to finish a sentence when the doorbell rang. Morgan and Bri exchanged looks. It was just after 8 a.m. on a Saturday. "Who might be at the door?" "I'll open it," Bri said. "Make careful to browse through the people first. If you don't recognize the sender, don't open the message." Morgan was cautious in case he and Corey heard Bri unlock the door and muffled voices. A few moments later, she reappeared with a tall, skinny man following her. Corey sat with her back to them. Lieutenant Morgan received with astonishment. He gazed at Morgan first, then watched as Corey immediately tightened her robe. "Please, off-duty. My name is Gerard, Lieutenant. Gerard Morgan made an amendment to the station reservation. May I get you a cup of coffee?" "If it's not an issue," he responded. Morgan slid his chair back to make room for Bri, who poured him a cup and placed it in front of him before sitting down. "So, Gerard, what brought you here Saturday morning?" "Is there any news on the case?" Morgan asked. "Not really. That's why I came to see if you could remember anything else." He grinned at Corey. Corey told him that she had started to remember bits and pieces, but nothing that would help with the inquiry. During the chat, it appeared to her that he was awkwardly flirting with her. She felt weird wearing just a robe. Overall, she had not had a single sexual thought since she awoke in the hospital. She began to notice the distinct features on his face. High cheekbones, square chin. He didn't resemble a model, but he wasn't particularly ugly. Corey noticed herself quietly flirting back. She remembered what Janet had said about his terrible divorce. He stayed for about half an hour, and it became evident to everyone that the lieutenant's real motivation for visiting was a wish to see Corey again. Bree walked him to the door and went back to the kitchen. Bree laughs that the big, powerful cop appears to have feelings for Corey. Corey flushed. Wasn't that only my imagination? I suspected he was getting strange with me, but I wasn't sure. She responded with a small smile. He appears to be a great guy, but I can't even consider getting into a relationship until I figure out who I am. Hell, I might have a husband and kids, she continued. He recently went through a painful divorce. Bree and Morgan were astounded by her final statement. How did you know that? Bree inquired. Janet, the female cop I lived with, was a source of information. I believe I know more about what is going on at the station and who is sleeping with whom than the lieutenant himself, she joked. Damn it. Morgan swore. What? Asked his wife. So, I was thinking that we might all go out together today and do something. You girls had been sitting in the flat for too long. I was thinking we could go to the lake, the zoo, a museum or something like. I should have invited Gerard to join us, but I didn't consider it. Now he's gone, and I don't have his personal phone number. Corey stated that she observed the expression she received. Well, he gave it to me the night I checked into the motel. He told me to call him if there was an emergency. That seems like an emergency to me. Bree laughed. The call was made, and Gerard readily accepted. The first stop was Navy Pier. He somehow persuaded Corey to ride the Ferris wheel, on one condition. Morgan and Bree also had to go. Because it was his idea, Gerard insisted on paying for everyone's tickets. When they returned to shore, they ate lunch while listening to Lake Michigan's waves crash against the pier. After that, they walked 2 miles along the boardwalk to the Field Museum. When they returned to their apartment, the sun had already set. All 4 of them were fatigued and knew they'd have no trouble sleeping that night. Everyone piled out of Morgan's automobile as soon as he shut off the engine. What a beautiful day, Corey exclaimed with a wide smile. I can't remember the last time I had such a great time. The others gazed at her, unsure what to say. The first Bree got the joke and laughed. Morgan and Gerard followed suit. On their way back, everyone persuaded Gerard to stay for pizza. It was nearly 10 o'clock when he left. Corey walked him to the parking lot. Gerard took advantage of their alone time to say what he had been thinking about all day. Corey, I understand that this is not the best time for you, but I just wanted to say that I would like to see you more often. Do you believe you could go to dinner with me for anything? He hadn't been particularly covert about his plans all day, so that didn't come as a surprise. She liked him too. However, one thing disturbed her. Gerard, do you feel ready to start dating so soon after your divorce? He was shocked. Damn it. She knew more about his life than her own. His brain began to work quickly in an attempt to comprehend. Then he recognized Janet as the most chatty woman in the 18th precinct. He replied with a smile. Oh, I hope I did not put her in a horrible situation. No, not really. Everyone knows Janet's chatty personality. To be honest, I was unsure until today. I thoroughly loved spending time with you, Corey. I am ready. She smiled. In that case, I'd be delighted to join you for supper. They both smiled as they separated. Later that week, Corey spoke with her therapist about the flashbacks. Do you know what might have caused them? Asked the doctor. Corey struggled to recall, but the doctor had already made a good estimate. The last time you were here, Corey, you were telling me about a buddy who was cheating on her husband. Could this have been a factor? You're correct. I discussed it with Bree that day. I told her what you had said about confessing. Dr. Wahlberg nodded her head. The reason for Corey's memories was becoming clear. It's clear that you've had a lot of stress in your life, Corey. This is most likely the source of your memory loss. And I'm concerned this will be the motivation for memory recovery, rather than the words of encouragement Corey expected. Between knowing what 3 men had done to her, not knowing if someone was trying to kill her, and her buddy cheating on her, she didn't want any more stress. Still, she was determined to do whatever it took to regain her memory. By the end of the appointment, Corey couldn't help but inform the doctor about her talk. What exactly are you talking about, Lieutenant Ashwood? Yes. Do you know him? Of course. He works alongside my brother-in-law, Jerry Wilson, remember? Jerry begged me. Day and night until I agreed to take your case. Right. Sorry. I've never thanked him. I really should send him a thank you card. He asked how you were doing multiple times. You seem to be a celebrity in the precinct. Yes, at least that is what Jerry claims. It's encouraging to watch Gerald venture out into the world. All of his co-workers want him to start enjoying life again. He's a decent man with a good head on his shoulders. Everyone understands this. He will be promoted to commander. And we'll give you your area. I have no problem. I mean, there is no reason I shouldn't date him. No problem, the doctor replied. The session went well, and Corey left the office smiling. Bree joined her as they scheduled their next receptionist appointment for the following week. They stopped on the way home so Corey could buy a thank you card. A little later, while Bree was making supper, Corey sat at the kitchen table and wrote a thank you message to Jerry Wilson. Around the same time, Mafia boss Vito Genesee contacted his talent. The FBI discovered Johnny's body. Tony's jaw nearly hit the floor. No way, hell! We toiled all night to ensure he was buried deep enough that no one could ever discover him. Yeah, someone discovered her. And I have some more unpleasant news for you. Remember the girl in the hospital? Rumor has it that she was found staggering around not far from where you killed him. I knew the timing was weird, but you were certain you hit it. You never miss. Do you still believe you will never miss? He reacted angrily. Okay, I understand. Like I stated, she appeared out of nowhere. She took me off guard. But I'm telling you, boss, she was too far away to recognize anybody, so you continue talking. Besides, isn't she the one who can't recall anything? Yeah, I won't take any chances. I want this gal to be eliminated. Do you believe you can manage it? Tony bowed his head. Yes, certainly. Okay. She's staying with a newspaper reporter, photographer, or something like that. Find her and Tony. Don't mess it up again. The Mafia boss's warning was plain. If he made another mistake, he would be the next to fall. I can manage it, Vito. If the information regarding the newspaper was correct, Tony would easily locate it. The Mafia had eyes and ears throughout the city, including the police and the newspaper. Bree sat on the couch a few nights later watching a late-night chat show. Morgan arrived home after his night shift. She knew immediately that something was awry. He did not welcome her with his customary kiss. In fact, he did not acknowledge her at all. Instead, without saying anything, he went straight to the kitchen and got a beer from the fridge. Corey and Gerard just returned from a date. They were discussing in the parking lot when Morgan arrived. Gerard was focused on Corey, but she was watching Morgan. Something's wrong, Corey stated. Why? What do you mean? Morgan's hostile demeanor was evident when he opened the car door and exited. She said, I'm not sure, but I hope it's not what I'm thinking. I'd better go in. Do you want me to come with you? No. She instantly kissed Gerard's lips. I can handle it, she said. And before he could get out and unlock the door for her, Corey was already briskly walking across the parking lot to the apartment, unsure what was going on. Gerard had no intention of leaving until he was certain everything was fine. He turned on the radio and reclined in his seat. When Morgan did not return to the living room, Bria went to look for him. She discovered him seated at the kitchen table holding a drink. He appeared to be having difficulties breathing. His eyes were glassy, as if he had just cried, and she could sense the tension from across the room. Bria discreetly took a chair on the opposite side of the table. What happened, dear? Morgan was leaning to one side and staring at the beer. He was rolling his fingers. Remember Stan McCarthy? We attended his Independence Day party a few years ago. He was a sergeant for the service week, she responded. I recall the party, but practically everyone present was a cop. I don't remember one from the other. Well, he remembers you. He told me multiple times throughout the party how fortunate I was. Morgan spoke in a monotone voice that began to worry Bria. He was obviously not himself. She was starting to feel apprehensive. Darling, what happened? Has something happened to him? Morgan resumed his monotone diatribe without responding to her immediately. He attended night classes to become a detective. When he received his certificates, there was no position for him in Chicago's detective bureau. So he got a job with the Des Plaines police. The hairs on Brie's neck stood on end. She met Bob in Des Plaines. Morgan continued. He was recently at the Cherry Lane Motel in Oakton investigating a robbery. And guess who he spotted strolling in with another guy? No, this cannot be. She assured herself there was no longer any uncertainty. Bob had escorted her to the Cherry Lane Motel. Through her tearful eyes, she could see her husband's wrath. Stan was at the front desk when some Robert clients checked in and were assigned room number 122. He said this guy wrapped his arm around your waist and guided you to your room. He persuaded the clerk to hand over the key card, emphasizing that adultery is a crime in Illinois and threatening to charge him as an accessory. Stan informed me you were already in your underpants when he arrived. He stated you were either high or drunk. He couldn't say which, not understanding the circumstance. Stan stated that he assisted you in dressing and getting into a taxi. When he returned to the room, Karstens had already fled. His voice grew louder. Damn it, Bree. I know half the officers in Chicago and many more in the suburbs. Did you honestly think you could get away with cheating, or did you not care whether you were caught or not? Bree wanted to respond, but by this point she was in tears, too difficult to say anything. Morgan, she's pretty sure he drugged her. She was planning to tell you herself. He did not want to look at his wife. Morgan was so focused on his beer that he didn't notice Corey standing in the doorway. He was astounded by both her voice and her remarks. Did you know? He asked fiercely. She stressed that it would only be for a while. She searched for a way to confess, but she was afraid. It isn't what you think, Morgan. You should hear her side. It was too much for Morgan. He'd known about Bree's cheating for hours, but learning that Corey knew and didn't say anything despite everything he'd done for her was too much. Without saying anything, he stood up and headed to the front door. Morgan, wait! Corey shouted and attempted to grab him as he walked by her. Where are you going? Gerard was still observing from his car when he noticed Morgan nearly ripping the apartment door off its hinges on his way out. The lieutenant had already gotten out of the car when his enraged young friend accelerated out of the parking lot at high speed. He saw Corey leave with frustration. What the hell is going on? He demanded. Corey ran into his arms. Oh, Gerard, you need to stop him. Bree was discovered in a motel with another person, and I believe Morgan knows where he lives. I'm worried he'll go after him. Gerard has seen far too many of these situations over his career. Most of them did not go well. He took out his phone and called the precinct number. Chicago Police Deputy, 18th Precinct. So, this is Lieutenant Ashwood. I need a general manhunt for Morgan Johnson. He's driving a white Ford Escape with a press card on the rear window. I last saw her on Waveland and Bosworth approximately 5 minutes ago. Simply stop him and call me. I repeat, simply stop him and call me. Do not employ force. He may be headed for danger, and all I want to do is talk to him. Understood. Understandable, Lieutenant. I will submit the request right now. He ended the phone call and asked Corey if she knew where the other person lived. She said no, but Bree was undoubtedly aware. They both walked inside to discover Bree still sitting in the kitchen, looking terrified. Her eyes were puffy, and tear marks appeared on her cheeks. Did you stop him? No. He departed. Do you know where Bob lives? Bree's demeanor shifted as she understood the implications of Corey's query. You don't suppose he went after Bob, right? Oh, God. We need to stop him, Bree. That's what we're attempting to do, Gerard added. Where does he live? I do not know. He works in Des Plaines, but I'm not sure where he resides. Somewhere in the city, I believe. What's his last name? Bob Custance. Great. There are approximately 100 of these in Chicago. Gerald expressed annoyance. I hope the patrol car catches Morgan before he does something bad. Corey gazed at him with beseech eyes. Gerard, could you remain for a while? Yes, I'm not going anywhere. Thank you. She stated this while standing on tiptoes and kissing his cheek. It looks like it will be a long night. How about I brew some coffee? That sounds great, the lieutenant said affirmatively, and 15 minutes later, as Gerard was taking a sip of his coffee, his phone rang. He immediately grabbed it. Yes, they pulled him over near Irving Park, Lieutenant. He is sitting in the front seat of a cop car. Can I speak with you? Yes. So that would be amazing. What the hell is going on, Gerard? You put me on the wanted list. What have I done? Calm down, Morgan. I hope you didn't do anything. Where are you going? Do you actually care? Well, if you're going to Bob's place, it'll quickly become my responsibility. God. Morgan had a concept. Is the whole world aware of Bree's cheating with this guy? So what should I do now, Gerard? Suck it up. What would you do? Come home. We'll talk it over. Perhaps it isn't as horrible as you imagine. I am not going back there. Not now. Gerard is annoyed. If you beat this guy up, I will handcuff you personally. I went through that myself last year. I understand how you feel, but it isn't a choice. I am serious. Morgan, stay away from him. Morgan's side this time. Yeah, okay. But I'm not coming home. I will book a motel room. Do you promise? Yes, I promise. Okay. Give the radio back to Officer Gerard. Thank the police for stopping. Morgan then contacted the station and ended the manhunt. There was nothing else he could do. He's okay. Both women wanted to know when he finished the chat. I believe so. He stated he would book a motel room. The lieutenant checked his watch and realized that it was already well past midnight. It's time for me to leave, he remarked. I had to be at work by 6. Can you handle it? Yeah, Corey said. We'll probably cry all night. Please do not hesitate to call if you have any problems. We will not. Thank you again for your assistance, Gerard. Corey placed her arms around his neck, kissed him farewell, and led him to the door. Bri returned to the living room and sat with her legs tucked under her. Her entire body trembled. What should I do now, Corey? What shall I do? I know I lost him. He will never forgive me. I know him. Corey exercised all of her willpower. She desperately wanted to beat and yell at her friend, tell her how foolish she was, but she couldn't. Even though Bri had done something terrible, Corey had no intention of abandoning her. She hugged her grieving friend and drew their bodies together. Give him time, sweetheart. He's not in the mood to hear anything we say right now. We need to give him time to settle down. Morgan will take a long to calm down. He finally found a reasonably priced motel and booked a room for the night. There was a tavern across the street. He considered walking there, but decided that keeping a clear head was more vital than attempting to forget his alcohol problems. After all, they'd still be there in the morning, and he'd be hungover too. Morgan sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the empty room. It wasn't his first time alone, but it was the first time he felt lonely no matter where he went. Whatever he did, he could always feel her inside him. She was like a light that shone in his soul, and neither time nor distance could extinguish it until now. Sitting there, he felt empty within, saw only darkness, and had thoughts of betrayal. Moisture began to gather in his eyes, causing his vision to distort. He took a deep breath and pushed his grief away. He couldn't recall the last time he cried, and he was not going to give himself the luxury of feeling sorry for himself. He hurried to the restroom to wash away his tears. When he returned, Morgan was stretched out on the bed, fingers crossed behind his head. He had dozens of questions on his mind, but one in particular kept coming back. Was Bob the only one? Or were there more? He felt like a fool, a loser, while he worked to create a future for the two of them. His wife had cheated on him with other men. He continued to blame himself. How could he be so naive? Is this so stupid? Furthermore, Corey was clearly aware and said nothing. The more he attempted to relax, the more his thoughts drifted to the pig. His wife was sleeping with Robert Custance. All he had was his name. He thought it was humorous that Gerald had put him on the wanted list. He assumed I knew where the guy lived, he remembered. Sorry, I don't know. There must be some way to find out. But how? He chuckled at the irony. There is little privacy in today's society, but locating someone's address is more difficult than it was in the days of landlines and phone books. He glanced at the white ceiling, his thoughts racing through the possibilities. He knew it was doubtful, but the only place he could think of was the motel where that bastard had taken Bri. Perhaps he works nearby, or someone knows him. He thought he took a few deep breaths and decided to try to fall asleep. He was physically and emotionally fatigued. He will be able to think more clearly in the morning. The light of the new day barely penetrated the heavy curtains that covered the windows. Corey and Bri fell asleep on the couch, waking up with neck discomfort and heavy hearts. Morgan drifted in and out of sleep several times throughout the night before giving up and stopping trying to sleep when he spotted light through the drapes. Even Gerard couldn't sleep comfortably. He came to know Morgan better after dating Corey, and he appreciated what he discovered. He has seen this too many times. The actual victims lost their jobs and even went to jail for doing something stupid. He did not want this to happen to Morgan. Gerard observed something while on his way to the office. Charlie walked, while officers stood guard outside Corey's hospital room. He remembered what Charlie said about Morgan. "Hey, Charlie, could you just come into my office for a minute?" "Of course." "Lieutenant, what happened?" he asked as he followed his boss. "Charlie, how do you know Morgan Johnson?" "Pretty excellent, I suppose. My wife and I have attended a few gigs and events with him and Bree, and we occasionally play golf together. Why is he the type who would seek vengeance? Because someone harmed him." Charlie opened his mouth in amazement. "What have you done, boss? Not me." "Idiot," he replied with a smile, "just someone who overheard him." Charlie was now worried. "I do not know. I know he won't back down. He was with us when we took over that terrible place last year. One of the clients threatened him before I could say anything." Morgan pinned the guy against the wall and hissed at him. I didn't hear what he said, but it appeared like he instilled terror in the guy. When Morgan freed him, he took only a half-dozen photos. Was said, "I'm not sure about revenge, but I don't want to be on his wrong side." That is not what Gerard wanted to hear. "Okay, thank you, Charlie. What is going on, Lieutenant? Is he in trouble?" "I'm not sure, Charlie, but you could want to call him after your shift today." Bree and Corey sat at the kitchen table, holding mugs of coffee, debating what to do. They didn't want to intrude, but they also didn't want him to believe they weren't concerned. They decided to text him many times throughout the day. Bree sent her first message shortly after 8 in the morning. "Please believe me when I say that I had no intention of sleeping with Bob and didn't. I admit that some of what we did would not have passed the fidelity test, for which I sincerely regret." Corey sent the message a few hours later. It was short and to the point. "I owe you so much. I apologize for not telling you, but I didn't have the heart to hurt you like that." Morgan was having breakfast at Denny's when she received the first message. He glanced at him, but the words held no sense for him. He was too preoccupied with figuring out how he would locate the address contents if nothing worked out at the motel. He heard his phone vibrate with multiple text messages during the day, but did not check them. He had other problems. He was on his way to work when his phone rang. He looked at the screen and realized it was Charlie. After responding, Charlie offered they share a beer, but was unhappy when Morgan informed him that he would be working the night shift all week. Charlie reluctantly said his goodbyes. We never knew what was bothering Gerard so much. Morgan began reviewing his duties as soon as he entered the newsroom. He made a single call and agreed to move one job half an hour early. This allowed him ample time between tasks to visit the Cherry Lane Motel and ask a few inquiries. He arrived shortly after 7. There was no one in the lobby, just one young man behind the desk. Morgan approached with a friendly smile. "Hi," he greeted. The young man replied with the same smile. "Yes, sir, how can I help you? I was wondering if you worked that shift last month when there was a robbery here. Are you a detective? Did you capture him for a second?" Morgan considered lying, but decided against it. "No, simply a concerned citizen," he said to the young man's smile. "Disappeared? I know it wasn't your belongings that were stolen, so why should you care, based on the guy's responses?" Morgan was confident this was the proper person. He decided to be honest. "The woman is my wife," he explained, "and I believe that guy drugged her with something." This appeared to change the clerk's attitude. "Oh," he replied sympathetically. "Look, nothing occurred. I gave that investigator the room key and he took her out and put her in a taxi. They did not have time for anything. I cannot provide you with the security footage. I had previously given it to the investigator because of the robbery that night." Crap, Morgan reprimanded himself beneath his breath. Camera footage. He didn't think about it. "Okay, I already know the guy's name, but I really want to find him. Do you happen to know if he works nearby? Or how can I find out where he lives?" Morgan's smile broadened as he noticed the young man looking at him. "What are you planning to do? You're not going to kill him, right?" "No, I won't murder him. I just want to know if he dragged her, and if that was the only time this made sense to the clerk. This guy has come here a few times, usually with a lovely blonde, but I've seen him with others as well. I'm not sure where he works, but he has a nameplate on his car. He drives a silver Hyundai with a cast license plate." Morgan's smile instantly spread from ear to ear. He began to withdraw $20 from his wallet. "Sir, I can't take it. You're being recorded by a camera." The young man nodded to the camera in the corner. "If the manager notices me collecting money, he will question why, and I'd prefer to keep this chat between us." Morgan said, "Okay, here we go." If people see me handing you a business card, they will assume I am a salesperson. Do you have any senior relatives with forthcoming birthdays? Well, my grandmother turned 75 this year. I'm not sure exactly when. So, when you find out, call me at this number and I'll make sure her portrait appears in the newspaper on her birthday. The clerk pulled Morgan's business card off the counter and discovered she worked as a photographer for the Tribune. Really? Thank you very much. She'll be delighted. Morgan departed the motel with a new energy. His first instinct was to have Charlie punch the number, but he changed his mind. Charlie seldom contacted him for a beer after work. He had a family and enjoyed spending time at home. Morgan was not foolish. He understood Gerard had probably informed him of his dilemma, so Charlie would not want to give him the information. It was usual. He knew a number of other cops in the city. He will find someone to punch the number that evening, as he finished his assignment. Morgan opted to return home, even at $65 per night. He could not afford to stay at a motel. Bria's heart started racing when she saw him walk through the door. He was still dressed the same as last night, which made her wonder if he would stay or change. She stood transfixed in horror until she noticed him putting away his camera. It was a good sign that he would spend at least one night. "Where is Corey?" he inquired, walking past her into the kitchen to get a beer. She almost did not recognize his voice. He sounded chilly and uninterested. Perhaps it was her fault that she interpreted his comments in this manner. "She is on a date with Gerard. I assumed she would remain home and keep you company," he responded sarcastically. She offered, "But I hoped you'd come home so we could discuss." I understand. I am not in the mood to discuss, Bri. I'm not sure whether is more hurt or angry, but I'm certainly not ready to chat." He sat at the kitchen table, took a sip of beer, and set the bottle down. "I simply don't comprehend. I thought we were really happy. I believed you felt the same way I did, but you loved me the same as I loved you. Morgan, I love you. Please believe me. I never meant to sleep with him. Not really. Not really. What do you mean by not for real? What game were you playing? Some type of game. Catch me if you can. No, it's me." Morgan raised his hand, shaking his head. "Forget it. Sorry, I started discussing it. I truly do not want to chat right now." At that point, they heard the door open. Gerard and Corey just returned from a date. Gerard decided to pop by and make sure everything was well after noticing Morgan's car in the parking lot. Morgan was not in the mood to socialize. There he is, public enemy number one. Gerard cracks jokes, attempting to calm the tension. "Yeah, ha ha," Morgan replied mockingly. "What makes you think I know where that scumbag lives? You don't know? No, absolutely not. Why should you? You know a lot of people, Morgan. There are a lot of officers and people in high positions. Isn't it ridiculous to believe that you could possibly obtain his address?" "Yeah, I don't know. Where were you going then?" "Anywhere except here," he responded decisively. Everyone could tell Morgan was still not in the mood to discuss. Gerard leaned over to kiss Corey. "I better leave," he said. "Yes," Corey answered. "I have a doctor's appointment in Warburg tomorrow, so I better go to bed too." They both headed to the front door and said farewell with a little more emotion. Corey yelled out as she made her way to her bedroom. "Good night." Bria was the only one who responded to her. Both she and Morgan sat at the table, unsure what to say to each other. Bri finally broke the stillness. "Are you planning to sleep?" Morgan said, "I'll sleep on the couch." Bri felt pain but was not startled. She sighed sadly. "If you change your mind or notice your neck is stiff, you can always join me. However, I hope you already know this. Good night, Morgan. I love you." She stood up and moved to the bedroom. Morgan sat, sipping his now lukewarm beer. He was more interested with finding her lover. Initially, he wanted to punch the guy, but he decided it was best to ask him a few questions first, then ask Brad the same questions to see if their answers matched, and then punch the bastard with Gerard in the 18th District. He knew he couldn't go there to run a license plate, but he knew several cops in the 1st District and was confident he'd find someone to assist him. He had to come up with an explanation for why he required this knowledge. He despised lying to anyone, particularly a cop. He didn't want to jeopardize his good friendship with them. He felt uncomfortable lying down on the sofa. He despised his current condition. He would give anything to get everything back to as it was before. Bria sat up in bed the next morning, still sleepy. Her eyes were puffy and red from sobbing throughout the night. When she first stepped into the kitchen, she looked at the couch. It was vacant. She assumed he was in the kitchen, but only Corey was there preparing new coffee. "Where is Morgan?" Corey turned her head, nearly gasping at the mournful expression in the doorway. "I don't know." He vanished as I stood up. Damn, I was hoping he'd at least remain for breakfast with us. "What time do you have an appointment with the doctor?" 10:30, Corey replied. Morgan had already entered the 1st District Police Station building, searching for a good candidate. He spotted Bill Taylor. "Hello, Bill Morgan. How are you?" "Okay, thank you. Could you please help me if you can?" "What do you need? Could you punch this number?" He held out a little piece of paper. "Morgan, are you aware that we are not permitted to use civilian license plates?" "Yeah, I know, but this guy ran into my wife's car yesterday. Our neighbor noticed this and scribbled down the number for me. I'd greatly appreciate it. Simply give it to your insurance company, Morgan. They'll take care of everything." Morgan did not expect that response, but he was a quick thinker. "Yeah, I know, but I figured I'd give the person an opportunity to work things out without the insurance companies. It isn't that horrible. It'll probably cost a few $100s to fix. If it were me, I would prefer to pay out of pocket rather than via my insurance provider. A person crashes into your car without leaving a message, and you still want to give him a chance. Morgan, you are kinder than me." "Okay," he remarked this while snatching the paper from Morgan's hands. "Give me a minute." He walked up to one of the laptops on the wall and logged on. He returned a few minutes later and gave Morgan the piece of paper back. "Here you are. Thank you." "Bill, I'm in your debt. Are you serious?" "My wife and I recently had a baby. I'd like to take some great family photos." "No question." My friend Morgan took out another card from his wallet and offered it to the uniformed officer. "Call me, and we'll set everything up." The address was in Rosemont. It generally takes 35 minutes, but during rush hour he estimated it would take at least an hour. He looked at his watch. It was nearly 8. There was a considerable likelihood that the individual would already be at work when he arrived. The following day was Saturday. He had the day off. So he assured himself that he would do it tomorrow. Later that morning, Bria sat in Dr. Wahlberg's little waiting room as her buddy attended her weekly session. When Corey sat up, the doctor realized something was wrong and inquired about it. Corey informed the doctor how Morgan discovered what had happened and how the situation worsened. Dr. Wahlberg was empathetic, but she had a bigger agenda. "I'm sorry to hear that," she told Corey. "Do you believe they would both be amenable to couples therapy? Wouldn't you?" Corey asked eagerly. "No. Not me. As I mentioned previously, this is not my area of expertise. I can, however, name a few exceptional therapists that specialize in this field. I'd be pleased to provide you some names before you leave today. However, this is your time, and I want to focus on your improvement, so just sit down, close your eyes, and forget about your friend's worries for a bit. I want you to empty your mind." It was easier said than done, but Corey gave her all. After a few minutes of silence, she felt calm. This must have been sent by the doctor, as she only talked then. "Corey, does the name Houston symbolize anything to you?" She opened her eyes and began to answer. "Okay, I know it's in Texas." She drew the name of the state. As she spoke, she realized the name seemed familiar. "Texas," she said aloud. For some reason, she paused for a time. "I can hear the kids on the playground. They call me that. They call me Texas. I am from Texas. This doesn't look correct." "No, wait, Houston. This is me. My name is Corrine Houston." She almost yelled from excitement. Texas was my nickname at school. She glanced at her therapist in disbelief. She remembered. "How did you know?" she asked the friendly doctor. "Your name is Corrine Houston. You live in Stockton, Illinois, and are 26 years old." "Yes, yes, yes," Corey shouted and jumped up and down in her seat. Harley did it. He dragged me from the car and flung me. That's who pulled my hand. Harley, we lived together. I remember this." She closed her eyes again, hoping to remember more, but the rest remained a fog. "Is he the person who shot you?" "No, I do not think so. I am not sure. I do not think it is him. I do not recall getting shot." She appeared to abruptly lose all of her vitality and sank back into her chair. "So this Harley drove you to a distant place and then left you there? Do you remember anything else?" Corey shakes her head. "No, I believe we had an argument. I know we argued in the car, but the details are vague. I recall it being a lengthy trek. I wasn't sure where he was bringing me. And then he simply stopped in the middle of nowhere and told me to get out. When I declined, he got out of the car and joined my side. He pulled me out. At this point, Corey's emotions overcame her and she began to cry. The doctor took tissues from a box on her desk and came over to comfort her patient. "Calm down," she whispered in a calming tone. "I realize it's difficult. Let's have a break. Try to relax. Lay down and close your eyes again. Just try to calm down." Corey attempted to do as the doctor said, but her mind was in turmoil. "How did you learn my name?" she asked. "Some kids were fishing in the river along Route 20 and discovered a wallet." "Yes, yes," Corey exclaimed happily. "My black wallet." "I tried to get him out of the front seat when he pulled me out of the car, but I couldn't. That Harley must have thrown his wallet into the river on the way home. Unfortunately, the only thing the kids discovered on him was this," she explained, setting Corey's driver's license on the table. Or at least that's what they said they found. Corey took it and examined it. "It's me," she said with pride. "I actually exist." She looked at the doctor. "How did you receive it?" "The children transported him to the local police station. Someone recognized your photo in the newspaper and contacted the Chicago Police Department. When Gerard learned of this, he called and asked what I should do. I did. Gerard was aware I was with him last night. He said nothing. Yes, I told him to give me everything. I hoped it would elicit memories and occur in a controlled setting. I instructed Gerard not to say anything. While the patient sat, the doctor observed her reactions and attempted to understand what was going on. I do not want to push you, Corey, but as your brain accepts more of your past, I believe you will begin to remember more. What occurred to you on that road was perhaps the worst experience we could imagine. The memory of what happened may never fully return to you, but if it does, I would rather that it occur in this office while we are together. Do you remember what happened when Harley got you out of the car? No, not really, she said, shaking her head. I simply remember it being scary. I wasn't sure where I was. I remember crying. She closed her eyes, and Dr. Wahlberg could tell she was attempting to force herself to remember more. It's okay, Corey. That should suffice for now, but please do not hesitate to contact me if you require further assistance. On her way back to the apartment, Corey excitedly told her friend the news. When they arrived at the parking lot, Morgan's car was already there. He still refuses to speak to me, Bria stated. I know he's angry, but I believe he's envisioning far worse than what actually occurred. And I can't stand seeing him in so much suffering. That reminds me, Corey responded here. She handed out some business cards. Dr. Wahlberg suggested these to marriage counselors. She felt either would be an excellent option. Bria took the cards and placed them in her purse. Thank you. I'm not sure whether I can convince Morgan to do this, but she started crying again. Oh, Corey, I'm terrified that he'll decide to end it all. He's quite angry. I wish I could just follow your suggestion and tell them myself. At least I could explain what had happened. He loves you, Bria. Yes, he is furious right now, but he is unaware of the entire situation. I know I can't make him listen to me. He keeps stating he isn't ready yet. I know he believes I'm having a sexual affair. Corey, I can't stand seeing him in such anguish. But how can I convince him to sit down and listen to me? I can't bind him to a chair. I'm not sure, Bria, but you will have to find a method. The longer he believes you slept with Bob, the worse things will be. What happens if he doesn't believe me? So what happens next? How do I prove that I did not sleep with Bob? The only two individuals who know for certain are Bob and I. And if Morgan doesn't trust me, he will certainly not believe Bob. I do not know. Perhaps you should take a lie detector exam or something. Hey, that's not such a horrible idea, Brian said cheerfully. It was the first glimmer of hope Bria had felt since her husband had met her as they entered the apartment. They heard a shower in the master bathroom. Bria, check the time on your phone. Morgan had 3 hours before heading to work. The girls decided to make him a wonderful meal. Corey was chopping potatoes for American fries, and Bria was preparing burger patties when they heard the shower stop running. Just as the potatoes began to fry, Corey poured out the remainder of her morning coffee and began brewing new coffee. When she heard the front door open and close, the two women exchanged shocked looks. Bria dashed to the door and glanced out, just in time to see Morgan get into his car and drive away without saying anything. As she returned, she sadly stated, "It appears that we will be having lunch together." Morgan couldn't stop thinking about how to contact Karsten's now that he had his address. He didn't want to be interrupted, so he walked to the restaurant and sat in a corner seat where he could ponder and eat simultaneously. After lunch, he sat drinking many cups of coffee, imagining various scenarios for trying to get the truth from his adversary. That night, after work, he parked in the back lot and waited until the lights in his apartment turned off. When he was fairly certain the children were asleep, he softly came in and sprawled out on the couch before setting his phone's alarm for 6 a.m. He'll be driving to Rosemont in 5 hours. He wasn't sure how he'd manage the approaching encounter, but he was going to attempt to keep his cool and obtain answers from the guy. Morgan was approaching the meeting that would transform his life around 6:45 a.m. on Saturday. He pulled into the parking area of an apartment complex just in time to observe a silver Hyundai drive away in the opposite direction. "Damn," he cursed loudly. He swiftly parked and sped off in search of his objective. There was just one car between them. Morgan figured the scoundrel was on his way to work, but he turned into a residential area. There were no more cars between them, so Morgan stayed at a safe distance and watched his opponent pull up to the curb, then back into the driveway, straight up to the garage door. Morgan believed Karsten's got out of the car, walked around it, and opened the trunk. Morgan parked on the curb in front of the home and began walking. He was halfway there when the garage door opened and another man emerged carrying a golf bag. "Damn," he said beneath his breath again. He hadn't planned on dealing with two men. The car's trunk collided with him out of sight. He could have turned back, but it was not his style. Besides, he wasn't going to wait anymore. When Karsten's closed the trunk, Morgan was already standing in front of him. Karsten's reply indicated that he recognized him. "What do you need?" Karsten's inquired anxiously. "I came for answers, and I'm not leaving until I receive them," Morgan reacted fiercely. "So much for managing your wrath." "Oh, seriously?" Karsten's responded mockingly. "What if I don't want to answer the questions? Will you handle both of us?" Morgan cast a peek at the other man. "Will you support this jerk?" When he noticed Morgan's expression, he took a step back and raised his palms forward. "Hey, don't drag me into this," he warned. While Morgan maintained a close eye on the other man, Karsten sensed a chance to hit on the side. Morgan noticed this and instinctively stopped him. There was a fight. He didn't know what his golf buddy would do. Morgan looked in his direction. He was watching. He looked at Morgan. "Hey, he started it first. I saw it," he explained. "Let me guess. Your wife's name is Bria, or something like that." Morgan was stunned by the comment. "How do you know this? This brilliant guy has been talking about her to us for the past 2 or 3 months. Yes, there are 4 of us. Every weekend we meet to play golf. We all warned him he was playing with fire, but he was desperate to get her in bed. Did he say if it happened or not? So far as I know, no. It appears that he was close to this. But a hotel staff disrupted their rendezvous." The stranger chuckled. "I don't think he has seen her since." Morgan stated, "My wife believes he put something on her. I would not be shocked. He boasted about having a source. He even offered it to us, claiming that because the girl had no memory of what had occurred to her, she could not be held culpable. We all told him where to place it. May I ask you a question? You seem like a kind man. Why are you going around with someone as creepy as him? It's only 4 hours on the weekend," he explained. "He also plays golf well. One of our guys actually likes him a little." Morgan shook his head, turned around, and returned to the car. The meeting did not go as planned, but he was confident he had enough information to confront Bria. As the adrenaline started to wear off, he realized he was hungry and stopped for breakfast on his way home. He entered the house around 11 a.m. Bria and Corey sat at the kitchen table, cups of coffee in front of them. He noticed that there was only 1 cup of coffee left in the pot. The girls observed silently as he pulled a cup from the cabinet and poured the rest for himself. "Corey, could you leave us?" he asked. She looked to Bria and saw terror in her eyes. "Morgan, would you mind if I stayed? Perhaps I can help to resolve the conflict." Morgan gazed at her. That was sufficient. "Okay," she replied, dropping her head in surrender. "Please keep in mind that she loves you wholeheartedly." Morgan. With these words, Corey entered her bedroom. Morgan sat in her seat and instantly began talking. Have you slept with him? No, she said decisively, and I never meant to do that. I know he gave me something that night at the motel. Morgan, otherwise I would not have gone there with him, so what was it anyway? And I don't want this foolishness around, not really. Why were you dating him if you didn't plan to sleep with him? I was simply flirting. At least for me, it was simply that. I knew it was wrong, and I knew he was not beyond having sex with married women, but it should never have occurred. Honestly, Morgan, I never intended to sleep with him, and I never imagined he'd go so far to give me something. Was it just a game for you? Were you teasing him? Catch me if you can? It did not start that way. It simply progressed. How did you meet him? We ran into each other at the mall one time. What do you mean by they collided? Did you know him before? Yes. I dated him before we got back together. I quit it the moment you and I became exclusive. However, I have not seen him since then. Until one day in the mall. We ate lunch together. I didn't think it was a big issue and didn't intend to meet him again. But in a month, I was going to have lunch with Linda Whitaker. I was completely dressed with makeup and prepared to head out when she called to cancel. It was unsatisfactory. I really wanted to eat lunch with someone. I couldn't call you. You always eat on the go. So I phoned Bob. Of course, he was really flattering, constantly complimenting me on my appearance. They were pleasant to hear, but they had no impression on me. So when he called a few weeks later and asked me out to dinner again, I didn't see the problem. If you didn't see the damage, why didn't you inform me you were going to lunch with your ex-boyfriend? For obvious reasons, Morgan. But come on, I know you flirt with your favorite waitresses. You don't come home and tell me about it because it's just harmless entertainment. I never visited a motel with them, Morgan shot back. Bria exhaled quietly. It was the difficult part. Morgan might have regarded this aspect of the story worthy of divorce, but she was now prepared to confront it. Call me naive, but I had no idea what he was up to until our third dinner together. What was he up to? Bria, do you know Morgan? Married or unmarried? He wanted to get me in bed. When you discovered this, why did you keep dating him? Because it became a challenge, a competition that I was confident I would win. She stated that he was always quite confident when we were dating. Always so confident. At the time, I thought it was quite nice. I believe I'm slightly older now. Anyway, the third time we ate lunch together, he began throwing himself at me. I thought you were a cocky bastard. You know I'm married, but you still think you can get me into bed. Then I decided to simply torment him till he gave up. I even had a short speech written about you, and what a wonderful lover you are, and how much I love you. I hope to confound him in this way. Bria, you went above and beyond what I did for lunch with him. Stan spotted you at the motel around 9 p.m. She nodded, and tears welled up in her eyes. When he contacted to schedule the next meal, I informed him that I couldn't because you work the night shift. Then he advised eating dinner instead of lunch. I knew I was definitely pushing the line, but I truly wanted to take that smug look off his face, so I consented. I believe he expected it to happen that night, and I was happy to witness his disappointment when it didn't. Unfortunately, he did not make a concrete offer, so I did not get to deliver my speech, but I truly believed that was it. I didn't expect to hear from him again. So, when he called a few weeks later, I was shocked. He must have understood your schedule because he knew you'd be working the night shift. He asked me to dinner again. He took me to the motel at night. I assumed this would be his final desperate try. I expected enormous pressure, but I consented because I believed I would get a chance to express what I wanted. I never anticipated him to do what he did. At first, I assumed I had consumed too much alcohol, but then I reflected on it the next day. I only had 2 Strawberry Day requests, and I don't think I completed the second one. I swear he put something on me. Morgan, I cannot prove it, but I am certain he did it. Morgan mumbled, I don't doubt it. Surprising. Bria, so do you believe me? She inquired with a trace of optimism in her voice. I believe you. He responded with a sigh. Morgan glanced out the kitchen window silently. It was clear that something was still bothering him. Bria could not take the silence. So you aren't thinking about divorce? I didn't say that. But you claimed you believed me. I didn't sleep with him and never planned to, perhaps. But you misled me with little effort. You had 5 secret dates in 3 months, which I never guessed. I believe you when you say you did not plan to sleep with him. But how about next time? I absolutely trusted you till now, but you've shown that you can do things behind my back, if it benefits your interests. Maybe next time you'll want to sleep with a male. No, 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 Morgan, I will never do that. Never, she fiercely denied. I believe in our vows. I promise to be true, to respect, and to love you in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, till death do us part. I meant it, Morgan. These are the most essential words I've ever said. He paid close attention to her. Tears were running down her cheeks, her hands were white from a nervous grip, and her entire body was quivering. She was never really adept at acting. Her sorrow was real, and so was his. His father constantly reminded him that while making an important decision, he should consider all options. Consider the opposing viewpoint. Weigh the pros and cons, and then trust your instincts. He stood up and approached the door. Where are you going? I do not know, Bria. I just feel lost right now. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do. When will you be back? I do not know. He spoke more firmly. Please leave me alone for now. I'll return when I get back. That's all I can tell you right now. Bria began crying even more as he left. Corey remained in her room the entire time, trying not to listen, but she plainly heard the door close. She stepped out and saw Bria crying. What exactly did he say? She asked. He still doesn't know what he's going to do. I told him everything. Corey, just as you said, I told him the truth and he said he believed it, but he no longer trusts me. She grabbed a napkin and wiped her eyes. I did not want to betray Corey. Honestly, I never considered it that way. I know, honey, you can see it from his side, right? Bria nodded and continued to wipe away her tears. Corey pulled up another chair next to Bria and sat down to console her friend. Listen, I've got another date with Gerard today. I am going to call to cancel it. Bria insisted. No, you are not. I will not let my problems affect you or Gerard. Okay, then why don't you join us? Gerard won't mind, and it will be beneficial for you to leave. No. Are you kidding? I do not think Gerard will appreciate my presence. You mentioned he was taking you to Leonardo's tonight. This is a beautiful place, and extremely romantic. Actually, let's look through my closet for something. We're roughly the same size. Let's see if I have a lovely dress that would suit you. Morgan wasn't sure where he was going. He simply needed something to occupy his time. He couldn't think of anything else to do except go somewhere. He thought he was on his way to the village when his phone rang. Out of habit, he pressed the speakerphone button. Hello? Hello, friend, this is Charlie. What? How are you? It's been better. Charlie, what happened? Sorry to hear this, buddy. I called to find out if you played handball. I had a 2-hour court reservation, but my partner just canceled. Jesus, Charlie, I'm in the car now. I am not dressed for this. Besides, I haven't played for a few years. I'm not even sure I own a glove, so what is the problem? Go home and change, and do not worry about the glove. Every Christmas, the kids give me a new one. He laughed. I have 5 different sizes. I'm confident I have the right one for you. Morgan thought for a brief moment. You know, this might be just what I need right now. Where's the court? West side. Is this the one just behind Roosevelt? Exactly, Charlie confirmed. I'm not sure how competitive I'll be, but I will be there. The call lifted his spirits slightly. Spending time with a friend and venting your frustration on a small black ball has never felt better. He checked the time. It was a little after 12. He had no intention of going home, so he went to Target to buy some gym clothing and sneakers. Charlie was already changing in the locker room when Morgan walked in. They shook hands and smiled. How is the mysterious woman doing? Asked Charlie. You mean Corinne? Yes, I heard she's making progress, which is fantastic. Is this related to the issue you're experiencing? I suppose my difficulties are the talk of the 18th district. No, not at all. The lieutenant suggested that you could need a friend. That is all. Look after this. What about we stop for a beer somewhere and you tell me everything? After all, if you can't pour your heart out, I will dig. To whom else can you pour it out? For the next hour, the two men fought as if the fate of the planet was on the line. Morgan dropped the first 2 games, but rallied to win the third with a spectacular leap save. Their time ran out before the 4th game was finished, so they called a draw. Even though Charlie was 1 point ahead during the fight, Morgan didn't realize how hard he was hitting the ball until he tried to take off his glove after the match. The 2 pals had a shower before going to a little tavern 2 blocks away. Okay. Whose face was on the small rubber ball? Charlie inquired as they each ordered beer. Morgan had to think about the question, but before he could grasp what was being said, Charlie clarified that the ball had to symbolize someone. The way you struck it. Look at this hand. It's really swollen. I doubt you will be able to hold your camera. Morgan forced himself to smile. Old bridge man. She had lunch and dinner with this jerk last month. He slipped her something and led her to a motel. Oh, damn. Morgan, I'm very sorry. Has he taken advantage of her? Almost, as luck would have it. Stan McCarthy was investigating the robbery. He recognized her and entered the room before the jerk could do anything. If it hadn't been for Stan, that scoundrel might have carried out his plot. Jesus, Morgan, I'm so sorry. Do you know who this person is? Oh, yes. We talked briefly this morning. Oh, damn. Morgan, what have you done? He came at me, so I knocked him down. He delivered the initial punch, and I have a witness on my side, so I highly doubt this jerk would report me, while the two guys were discussing Morgan's problems. Bria helped Corey get ready for her big date with Gerard. Brian only had one dress in her wardrobe that she thought would be appropriate for Leonardo. It was a form-fitting dark purple evening gown with a plunging neckline and side slit. She only wore it once, to an Illinois State Awards dinner where her husband had been recognized for his photography the year before. Oh, Bria, I cannot wear this. It must cost a fortune. I am terrified I will spill something on him. Nonsense, Bria spoke. I've only worn it once, and Leonardo is little out of our price range, so someone needs to wear it. Bria called Corey into the master bedroom as she finished her shower. Carrie was still using the basic beautification products that Bria had given her. It was commonplace in everyday life, but Leonardo was everything but ordinary. Carrie, sit here, Bria urged, pointing her buddy to her private makeup mirror. We utilize my makeup. It's slightly better than what you got. Would you mind trusting me? She asked. I've always had an eye for what appears attractive in public. Carrie said, I'm all yours. Bria finished her makeup, and it was time to do something with Corey's hair. It was no longer obvious where they had been shaved, but Corey usually left them hanging freely on her shoulders. Bria took out a curling iron and hairspray and started arranging Corey's hair into an attractive updo to match her dress. When Corey glanced in the mirror, she couldn't even recognize herself. Oh, God. Bria, how did you do that? I look terrific, Bria remarked, ending her sentence. She glanced at the time. You should finish getting dressed, Corey. He will be here soon, along the journey. Gerard could not quit smiling. After a year-long dispute with his ex-wife, he thought it would be a long time before he was ready for another relationship. But here he was, already falling for a mysterious woman. He knew she wasn't married because of the two boys fishing in the river. This concerned him. He felt it would be his luck to fall madly in love, only to discover that she was married with 2 children. There was one bullet that missed. Gerard pulled into the parking lot of the apartment complex, and the thought made him smile from ear to ear. His mind was so busy with romantic ideas about the future that he completely overlooked the black Cadillac parked at the end of the lot. Corey wanted to make a grand entrance, so Bria unlocked the door. She asked Gerard over for coffee, stating that Corey would be out soon. Morgan's absence was evident. He wanted to inquire about how things were going, but lacked the courage. An uneasy stillness persisted in the air, but it was short-lived. Do you like it? Corey questioned as she walked out. Gerard was speechless. He simply paused and observed, bringing the cup halfway to his mouth as his companion gracefully turned to show off her clothing. Bria lent me this dress for tonight. I hope this is okay. Oh, I mean, yes, definitely. Corey, you look great. He was finally able to speak, finding his voice. Gerard put down his cup. Thank you for the coffee, Brie. He stood up again, admiring the lovely woman in front of him. Honey, we'd better go. If Gerard hadn't been so focused on the woman sitting to his right, he would have spotted the follower he picked up as he drove out of the parking lot to the restaurant. Gerard was able to inquire about Bria and Morgan. How are things at home? Honestly, I don't know, she responded. Bria swears she never meant to sleep with this guy, and I believe her. Furthermore, Morgan claims to believe her, but he still can't get over it. Just imagine what she was thinking when she walked out to supper with this guy. I believe Morgan is concerned about this. He worked at night and ate dinner rather than lunch, especially after she discovered this person was attempting to entice her. It's remarkable how many silly mistakes smart people can make. I hope they can resolve this. They appear to be deeply in love. They were still conversing as they approached Leonardo. As Gerard went into the restaurant parking lot, a black Cadillac followed them slowly. Espinosa couldn't have been happier. He recognized the woman and discovered where she had stayed last week, but he couldn't find a reason to kill her. The restaurant was the perfect setting. He'd been here several times before and was familiar with the layout. He also knew how to get out the back door. The place will be filled on a Saturday night. The more people there are, the greater the panic when the shooting begins. Everyone will be too busy hiding beneath tables to notice the shooter. He drove around the block to ensure there weren't any surprises. Then he halted in the alleyway. The building's back door was meant to be closed, but Spinoza knew from previous experience that waiters and cooks left it open so he could smoke outside. He removed a short-barreled K6 revolver from the glove compartment. He was only interested in one person, so instead of keeping the Magnum cartridges, he traded them for standard .38s before slipping the handgun into his jacket pocket. No one noticed when the killer moved through the kitchen and into the dining room. A quick scan of the room revealed his target and her partner sitting on the opposite wall. Her buddy sat with his back to Spinoza, so she gazed in his way. The crucial factor in such an operation is speed. So he focused and walked fast toward them. The approaching figure's quick movements drew Corey's attention. She looked up and immediately remembered Gerard. "That's him!" she yelled. "This is the man who shot me!" Gerard's head twisted, and he recognized the hitman as Spinoza brought out his gun. There was no time to grab my spare pistol. He pushed himself over the table, knocking Corey down and protecting her with his body. Panic spread across the diner as the sound of gunfire interrupted the discourse. Screams of fright and the sound of dishes and glass smashing added to the commotion as people fled for safety. Gerard felt the gunfire but was also able to fire his own. Morgan felt better than he had in a long time, thanks to exercise and the opportunity to vent to a buddy. He exited the bar in a little more upbeat mood. Previously, when he left the apartment, he planned to spend another night at the motel, but now he's changed his mind. However, before returning home, he decided to visit a restaurant. He was hungry and didn't know what Bria was cooking for dinner. It was about 7 p.m. when he went in and noticed the relaxation on his face. "I wasn't sure you'd return home. Are you hungry? I can cook stuff rapidly." "No. On my way home, I stopped to eat, but don't let me keep you from creating something for yourself." Before they could finish speaking, Morgan's phone rang. He looked up and realized it was Charlie calling. He smiled when he answered the phone. "Do you want a rematch already?" "Morgan, was Corey with Gerard tonight?" His voice sounded concerned. "I do not know." "Wait," he said, glancing at his wife. "Where is Corey? She is on a date with Gerard. Why?" Charlie had heard her response and didn't need a repetition from his pal Morgan. "Gerard was shot." "What?" he shouted. "Was he badly hurt?" "I do not know anything yet. Our district commander is calling everyone to let them know. How about Corey? I have no idea. Morgan Gerard was transported to Northwestern Hospital. I am on my way there right now. You should probably go there too, if she is hurt. I'm sure she was transported there too. They have the top trauma center in Chicago. I'm coming. Charlie, see you there." Bria was convinced that something dreadful had occurred after hearing only her husband's side of the conversation. "What happened?" "Morgan, what happened? I will tell you on the way. Let's go," he responded, already in the car. Morgan revealed that by the time they arrived at the emergency hospital, they were both panicked. Morgan approached the counter with Bria just behind him. "We came to learn about the victims of gunshot wounds. What can you tell us?" he asked impatiently. The chief nurse looked at their looks and chose not to ask the typical relationship questions. "Both men are preparing for surgery," she said. "And the woman?" he asked. The nurse said, "I know nothing about the woman." Her response quickly elicited two different thoughts. Bria, lacking her husband's experience, concluded this meant her friend was fine, whilst Morgan suspected she had been transported directly to the morgue. Morgan started looking for someone he knew when the nurse had second thoughts. "Oh, there was a woman who accompanied one of the men. I believe she's in the rear room with the officers." Morgan grabbed Bria and walked towards the emergency room door. "Sorry," the nurse raised her voice. "You cannot go there." Morgan was ready to start an argument with her when Charlie walked in. "They are with me," he stated, displaying his badge. "Let's go." As soon as they came through the doors, they noticed a group of men and women standing in the corridor. Some were in uniform, while others wore civilian clothing. Bria glimpsed a flare of purple among the crowd of people. When Corey, the heartbroken woman, heard her name, she ran towards them, hugging Bria and putting her arms around her neck. She was crying hysterically. "He cannot die," she sobbed. "He cannot die." Charlie and Morgan left the two women to console one another and proceeded to see what they could. Charlie began the conversation. "How is he?" Morgan had never met the district commander, but he believed he was driving the talk. He had just gone into surgery, he informed Charlie. It looks that he was shot twice in the back. The woman was present with him. She's quite upset. She appeared to be the objective. Gerard jumped onto her to protect her. Morgan joined the chat. The nurse stated that there were two men. "Who is second? Who are you?" "My name is Morgan Johnson. I am Gerard's pal." "Corey. Gerard was with the woman that lives with my wife and myself." The commander recognized the name and felt comfortable speaking in front of him. "The second man is Tony Espinosa, the gunman." Morgan and Charlie were astonished. They both recognized the name and its repute. "We honestly don't know what happened." He looked at Morgan and proceeded. "Your companion claims she heard 5 shots corresponding to the 2 that hit Gerard and the 3 that he spun. So for the time being, we are ruling out the second shooter. The child appears to have the answers, but she is too upset to speak right now. We should receive her statement shortly, but we wanted to give her some time to settle down. I have a couple of officers at the restaurant who question customers, but I doubt they can tell us anything." At this point, Bree and Corey joined the group. Corey hugged Morgan, who hugged back. When she saw her two pals, she appeared to relax immensely. I remember Morgan. I remembered everything the moment I saw his face. The commander saw this as a wonderful chance. He wanted to hear her description of what happened while it was still fresh in her memory. "Young lady, do you believe you're ready to make a statement?" "Yes, I think so. Can she be with me?" She asked about Bree. He nodded in approval. "Who has a patrol car outside?" Several officers responded. He selected one of them. "Go get the recorder out and find a quiet area where this young lady may give her testimony." "Yes, sir," said the man in blue. Both women followed him to the waiting room. He instructed them to wait, then returned a minute later with a voice recorder. He asked the nurse at the counter where they may go, and she pointed them towards a small consulting room down the hall. Everyone sat at a tiny table, where a police officer had put up a tape recorder. After stating his name, rank, date, and time, he asked both women for their entire names. "Okay, Miss Houston, start at the beginning and explain us what happened in your own words." Corey's journey began when she woke up in the hospital, with no memory of who she was or how she got there. After a few minutes of working out the backstory, she reached the section where the night's events were explained. So I sat on the side of the road, crying, after he took me out of the car and left me there. I was terrified to death. There was nothing except woodland on each side of the road. After around 20 minutes of not seeing any cars, I decided to walk. I expect to run into someone sooner or later. After a while, I needed to pee. There were no bathrooms nearby, so I strolled into the woods and went behind a giant tree. As I began to release myself, I heard a car approach. Then I heard her pause, which confused me because I assumed they had noticed me. I was only pulling up my pants when I heard voices. One man sounded like he was begging. I peeked out from behind the tree and noticed a man kneeling. Behind him stood another man with a rifle. It was the same person as tonight. Anyway, I shrieked when I witnessed him shoot another man. When I did this, the man with the pistol noticed me. I ran, but I believe he shot me. That was all I could recall until I heard voices. I must have been semi-conscious when those 3 men took advantage of me. But that happened after I was shot. That was the last thing I remembered before I awoke in the hospital. Dr. Wahlberg helped me recollect things in pieces, but seeing this man tonight brought it all back. I told Gerard he was the one who shot me, and I don't know what happened after that. Gerard sprang on me as soon as I heard the bullets. He saved my life. She mentioned losing consciousness again. The officer decided he'd had enough and ended the session. All 3 rejoined the swelling assembly of cops and loved ones. "How did things go?" asked the commander. "Okay," the cop responded. "Any word? Spin also died at the table. Gerard is currently being worked on." Corey noticed the doctor going towards them about 2 a.m. The crowd had decreased somewhat by this point, but a few stalwarts were still sleeping on chairs along the wall. "How is he?" Dr. Corey inquired. The others awoke when they heard her voice. Everyone was concerned about the gray-haired man in a lab coat. "He is recovering." The doctor responded with therapy. "I believe he'll complete the full job recovery." Corey slumped from relief. The others complimented the surgeon for his exceptional work. The doctor informed them that it would be at least 12 hours before the patient could welcome visitors. The crowd went home. The road to the apartment was calm. Everyone was simply too mentally and emotionally weary to say anything when they arrived. Morgan took one look at the sofa and decided to spend the night eating in your bedroom. He needed a solid night's sleep. Everyone passed out 5 minutes after their heads touched the pillow. The morning light was just beginning to shine when Corey winced as memories of the previous night returned to her. Her initial thoughts were of Gerard, but seeing Spinoza reminded her of everything, including being shot. She moved onto her back and drew the cover up to her neck, hoping to feel protected as the narrative of her life played out in her mind. "Dr. Wahlberg, I was right. She had a difficult existence. She was now able to put the memories in context. Indeed, her mother and father were beaten. Sometimes he returned home intoxicated and angry. The father lifted his hand at them and their mother. Apparently, this was the final straw for her mother. The following day, she packed a bag for the two of them, took all of the money she could find in the house, and left with Corey in her arms. They boarded the bus and drove as far as possible. Her mother was not an educated lady, but she was an excellent waitress and tipper. Life was challenging, but they made it through. Then tragedy struck. Her 35-year-old mother died from cancer. Corey was only 16. She remembers being at her mother's bedside as she took her final breath. She had no family and didn't know anyone who could take her in. So Corey dropped out of school and persuaded the restaurant owner to allow her to take her mother's position. She observed her work several times and learned a great deal about the waitress. She also observed her mother writing financial deposit slips and checks on accounts, so she just continued to counterfeit her mother's signature. She recalled a life filled with brutality, pain, and injustice. The sound of voices pulled Corey back into the present. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she swung her legs over the edge of the bed to sit up. Only when she reflected on her past did she realize that life was offering her a second opportunity. She reflected on the two persons who had provided her with food and shelter over the years, as well as the one who had given her hope. Not since her mother's death had she had someone in her life who meant so much to her. Corey put the robe over her nude body, tightening the belt around her waist. She reminded herself that these individuals are unaware of their good fortune. With this thinking, she opened the bedroom door and dashed into the kitchen. "Morgan Johnson, don't wreck your marriage with a silly error," she roared. "Do you know how rare a love like yours is? Yes, she did something stupid, but it was done with no malice and no intention of betraying you or you." She kept looking at a surprised Bria. "Never take this man's affection for granted again. Why do you believe he was hurt by your little game? Because you are his universe, his entire damn piece, and don't forget about it. And how will you react to his love if you ever offend him again? I'll personally kick your ass from here to Texas right now." She continued with a deep breath. "I am going to shower and change. Then I'll go to the hospital so I can be there as soon as Gerard is permitted to see visitors." She made herself a cup of coffee and went to the shower. The two astonished witnesses to her tirade just gazed at each other. "What was it?" Morgan inquired, beaming. "I don't know, but I believe she's correct." "Oh, do you think so?" He stopped for effect. "I agree. Is this true? So you're not considering divorce anymore?" "No," he replied, shaking his head. However, he did not have time to finish. Bria leaped into his lap, showering him with kisses. Corey grinned as she exited the apartment and got a taxi to the hospital, hearing the sounds of makeup sex from the bedroom. The woman at the front desk stated Gerard would have to wait a few hours before he could receive visitors. "I'll wait," Corey said. It was already lunchtime when the nurse discovered her in one of the waiting rooms. "Are you waiting for a patient in room 320? I'm not sure what ward he is in. His name is Gerard Ashwood. This is the officer who was shot last night. Yes, you can go to him." She thanked the nurse and nearly raced to the elevator. When she ran into his room, there were already 2 police officers there. One of them was Janet, the cop she was sleeping with at the motel. "Here she is, Gerard," Janet said. Safe and sound. He was concerned about you, she told Corey with a wide smile on her lovely face. She stepped over to his bed where he could see her. Yes, honey, I am fine, due to you. He gave her a foolish smile. His right arm was in a cast that extended up to his shoulder, yet he still resembled the man she had fell in love with. Janet poked her lover lightly on the side. We were on patrol and decided to pop by and see how you were, Gerard, but we need to get back, so we will leave you in Corey's skilled hands. Gerard thanked them for their visit and urged them to inform everyone at the station that he would be fine. But it appeared that the message did not go through. Over the next week, the smell of new flowers grew nearly overwhelming, and he was surrounded by more people than a Rolling Stones concert, including a police commissioner. Corey simply returned home to shower and sleep. She spent the remainder of her time close to him, talking and laughing for hours. She also attended to his every need and cared for him so well that the nursing staff named her an honorary member. The day before discharge, they had a more serious chat. His arm will remain in a cast for another 5 weeks, after which it will be nearly useless for several more. Corey volunteered to move in with him. It will take some time before you can use this arm again. I can help with the cooking. I can assist you get dressed. I can be your driver. I can do a lot to make your life simpler as you heal. He said, I only have 1 bedroom and 1 bed, he added after a little pause. It's not a problem for me if it isn't one for you, she replied with a smile. Corey's statement allowed authorities to connect Tony Espinosa to the murder of Johnny Rick's eye. Unfortunately, no evidence suggested that Vito Generic ordered the murder. 3 people had previously served prison for their crimes, so the case of the mysterious woman, as the men and women of the 18th District referred to it, was concluded. Morgan turned in. He has an adversary. Bob represents possession of a controlled substance. When they searched his flat, they discovered evidence to charge him with intent to distribute. He pleaded guilty in exchange for a lesser sentence, leaving the 3 golfers to search for a 4th for the next 3 to 5 years. Gerard Ashwood shocked himself after his difficult divorce. He figured it would be years, if ever, before he was ready to devote his heart to another lady again. But only a year later, he was standing at the altar, watching his lovely bride walk down the aisle. Rather than her father, she was accompanied by her good friend Morgan Johnson, while her friend Bria Johnson served as maid of honor. Gerard was made commander 14 months after the wedding and assigned his own region. Over time, he, Corey, Bria, and Morgan became inseparable with their children, never forgetting or taking for granted the second chance life had provided her. Corey, with the assistance of her husband and friends, established a charity for lost and battered women and opened 3 shelters in Chicago. Corey sat on the edge of her bed, looking at the outfit. Although 10 years had elapsed since that night, her memories were as clear as if they had occurred yesterday. After everything was sorted, she felt bad for destroying Bri's lovely outfit. She still had the money she received when she left the hospital, so she volunteered to pay for the dress. But Brad did not want to hear about it. She couldn't just throw it away. She discovered a hidden place for him, even if it wasn't necessary. Every now and then, Corey would drag him out of his hiding place to remind herself how fortunate she was, and never take Gerard's affection for granted. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened.